Aloha and welcome to Truth in Movies, a segment on my channel. I'm Jay Dreamers, where I break down esoteric breadcrumbs. I like to watch the movies and I learn a lot from them. So I've got over 70 movies now that we've broken down to try to pull out some some nuggets of wisdom, some pearls of truth. So this one is no exception. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the first Indiana Jones movie that we've done on my Truth in Movies series. It's my favorite one, so I wanted to start with that one. Many of you are familiar with Indiana Jones. We're going to do a lot of research into names and places and what the secret level of this movie, the secret story is really talking about. I feel like a lot of people tend to internalize many things, especially myths and legends and ancient stories nowadays because they're not believed literally or actually. They're internalized and they're turned into metaphors and symbolic imagery. But people have forgotten that there's substance behind symbols. There's substance behind there's literal, actual, and physical elements behind the spiritual or the energetic principles. All right, so we're going to jump right into Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Bump, ba-ba-bump, bump, ba-ba-bump, dum-da-dum-da. So classic. All right, cool. So we start things off with the studio that brought you the picture. It's a Paramount picture. Now, this right here shows you a little glimpse, a little preview of what this movie is going to be about. The main focus of this movie is what this symbolically represents, which they do all the time in the movies. They'll give you a little preview, like brought to you. Actually, every time I see this one, when I'm watching movies with my son, I always say brought to you by Mount Meru, because that's what this is. This is Mount Meru. And if you don't know what Mount Meru is, it's legends say that it's the highest, tallest, loftiest cliff mountain in the world, that it's at the center of the world, that it is the axis mundi, or the navel of the earth. And there are a multitude of legends that come out of that particular mountain. Many things come out of that particular mountain. Legends are just one of them. So as you can see, we've got the dome that they put around it, made out of stars, because that represents the sky itself. I counted the number of stars. It seems that Paramount has changed the number of stars over time, so I'm not going to get too detailed into that. But what we need to retain for this particular image is that represents the mountain at the center of the world, the holy mountain, the sacred mountain, the mountain of the gods, etc., the cave of saviors, the plasma volcano that contains and holds the fountain of youth, the light of the world that comes up, the earth energy that shoots up and touches the sky in gigantic, fantastic sky pillars or sky beams of light every other energetic cycle, or every other apocalyptic cycle that we go through. So, brought to you by Mount Meru. Let's go ahead and kick things off into Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. What does this mean, by the way? Paramount? Let's jump into that word. Para, essentially, if you look it up, means something akin to irregular or abnormal. So, paramount would mean an irregular mountain or an abnormal mountain. Oh, Raymond, hey, thanks. I appreciate you in the chat. So this is describing a paramount or an abnormal mountain, right? A distinct mountain, a holy mountain, a mountain that is set apart from all other mountains in the world. So it's brought to you by Mount Meru. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. We start things off, you might just think, oh, it's a cool desert scene, some strange rock formations. The reason that it's showing you this, thanks again, Raymond or Ramon. The reason that it's showing you this type of landscape is because this is what can happen with strong cosmic electrical scarring on our world. How are the mountains made? How are these cliffs? How are these strange rock formations made? I'm not one who has ever believed that it's just erosion over time. I don't see erosion when I look at that. Look, it's like clear, like sheer-faced cliffs. Like, that's not erosion. I'm sorry, that's not erosion. But I've shown on my channel many times how you can actually create things exactly like this on a microscopic scale using electricity, using a strong electrical current. You can actually pull mud and sand and stuff up into the air using electricity. So they make a huge point to show us the aftermath, the after effects of the apocalypse itself, of the plasma apocalypse, how the ground itself was pulled up into the air and then touched the heavenly angels or the plasma from above, completing an electrical circuit between the two, which instantly petrified that mud. which is why it looks like these things just look. I mean, look at that right there, right? It was pulled up. It floated up into the air, or was pulled up into the air, attracted to the electromagnetic discharge from above, or the cosmic discharge. And when it touched, it became petrified. That's why a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people would look at this particular region and say, oh, it looks like it's melted. I think it's the reverse, right? It wasn't always solid. It was more in a more malleable as you go back in time, right? Things were less dense back then, or even mud, right? Or even a form of liquidy clay or something like that. Whenever the earth shakes up a whole bunch, it causes liquefaction, which causes the waters to come up to the surface, and everything becomes very muddy. And then once it's petrified, whatever shape it's in, it instantly takes that shape. It just freezes right there. It becomes a statue, basically. Here's some other ones. These are in Utah, I think. And you can see Sean Connery. I'm probably going to do a Sean Connery impersonation a time or two. Here's a great one, too. Look at this arch. You can see it looks like it's stretched from this side to this side, right here in the middle, right? That's an electrical arc. It's following the electricity. That's why it looks like that, right? The mud reaches up, follows the electricity. It creates it creates an arch or an arc shape because that's what the electricity created. And it looks like it's stretched out right there. You can see movement in something that is statue form. Almost. I can, right? You can look at that and see how it probably moved at some point in time or stretched. It looks like somebody just stretched it from one side to the other, right? Definitely not millions of years of just wind and rain. It just happened to carve out arches and all these weird anomalies. All right, so now we meet young Indiana Jones. And he's in the Boy Scouts, I think it is, at this time. And they're actually on some Boy Scout trip, checking out all these ancient geographic sites and stuff. And then he goes off the beaten trail. He goes off the path. So he leaves the sightseeing tour that he's on to go explore, independently research on his own. And this sort of marks the beginning of his truth-seeking path. His dad has prepared him for this his entire life. But we'll get to his dad in a minute. Now, he finds this guy who's looking for the Cross of Coronado. So this is like his protege. Basically, this is not Indiana Jones, but this is someone that he looked up to, right? And sort of emulated. So this guy right here is actually being paid by somebody else who's very rich to go find these artifacts that are lost from another time. The Cross of Coronado, this is actually just sort of made up lore on behalf of the movie, but it's directly related to real stories of kings and queens, monarchies that paid people, that hired people specifically as treasure hunters, as explorers, not to go extend their land or anything. That was a byproduct. They went to go find the fountain of youth. They went to go find the Holy Grail. They went to go find the Spear of Destiny. Not because they were ridiculous children's bedtime stories that, had no merit. It's because they had so much merit. They were believed by so many people that the kings and queens who ran the country paid people handsomely to go find these artifacts, right? Now, unfortunately, over time, I feel like the reality behind the symbol, because that right there is a symbol, okay? The reality behind the symbol was lost, so people were looking for the symbolic image instead of the reality behind it. I'll explain to you. So the Cross of Coronado, Coronado represents an ancient explorer that was looking for the 7 cities of Cibola, or Cibola. They're called the 7 cities of gold located across the deserts, hundreds of miles, they say, to the north. Right? This is in the 16th century. Spaniards in New Spain, now Mexico, began to hear rumors of 7 cities of gold. So what happens? They sent word back to the king and queen of Spain, who then authorized their representatives here in what would become the United States or Mexico. They authorized them, yeah, go find it. Definitely. Stop whatever you're doing. Stop whatever, expansion of our land and our territory that you're doing. Go find the Holy Grail. Go find the 7 cities of gold. Now, I think that those two are directly related, which is why they put that into the movie. I have talked about the 7 cities or the 7 mountains, the 7 mountain mandate. I just did a video on it. So if you want more information on the 7 vials, the 7 bowls, the 7 mountains, etc., check out that video because it explains it in much more detail than I'm going to right now. It says here, and here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. This is from the book of Revelation. It's describing to you the location of the Holy Grail, of the Fountain of Youth also. However, this is what they describe that location as being when the Holy Grail is missing, when that fountain is dry. Instead of looking at it as a positive thing, it's looked at as a negative thing because it's still a place of power. It says, the mind that has wisdom will figure this out. The 7 heads that they refer to are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet to come. When he comes, he must continue for a short while. And the beast that was, and is not, and even is the 8th, and is of the 7, goes into perdition. So they're describing plasma, basically, okay? They're describing electromagnetic properties, cartoonifying them into these images of women and beasts and thrones, etc. But in reality, we're talking about geographic locations and things that are happening on a physical, actual level, scientifically, here in our world. So here's a map of the old lands at the North Pole, which I've shown many different versions of this map many different times. As you can see, these lands were split mostly into 4 large continents, with Mount Meru being in the middle. Now, it's interesting because Mount Meru, I believe, is represented in the Bible as being the throne of God, the place where the power of God sits, or the place where something very powerful resides. That's Mount Meru. Mount Meru, or the throne of God, is accompanied or surrounded by 4 heavenly beings, 4 angelic beings, 4 other lesser light sources or sky beams that probably shoot out around it. And then on either side, we've got an anode and a cathode, which shoot up into the sky, creating an electrical arc over the entire island, creating a mini dome around that particular region as well. And whenever that happens, that is the area where people flock to. They see those lights in the sky, and the wise make trips. The wise go on excursions. The wise take sabbaticals, or however, I don't know how you want to call it, but they know they need to go towards the light, right? So the wise people of the world go towards these lights that they see up towards the north, which is where the 7 cities of Cibola were said to have been, hundreds of miles to the north. You see, the problem with Coronado is that he only went a few miles to the north. He only went up like a few hundred miles. He needed to go beyond the northern winds. That's why it's the north. At the top of this map, it says Septentrio. I go into great detail in that in my other video about the 7 mountain mandate. But septen means 7. Trio, the root of that, is deru, which essentially means trees, or the 7 trees of the earth, the 7 columns, the 7 pillars, the 7 lights, the 7 beams, etc. Here's another example of it, the Septentrio, with the 4 continental islands there at the North Pole. Septem means 7, and then deru, or teru, is where we get terra, or the word for the ground, the word for the world or the earth, right? So 7 mounds, 7 mountains, 7 piles of earth, right? Tar, that's also where we get the word tar. So it's actually terra, which comes from deru. If you can see down there at the bottom, it says to be firm, solid, or steadfast. Something that is stuck in the ground or is a part of the ground itself, right? Something typically seen as being immovable. Here's an example of something I just drew up real quick just so you can get an idea. In the middle here, you would have the Fountain of Youth. You would have the largest opening into the world, which would have the largest and tallest sky beam of inner earth energy that shoots out, surrounded by these 4 living creatures. And then if we zoom out a bit, we could put, I'm guessing on some of this because I'm still trying to piece some of it together, but you could say that this mountain right here, which is also a magnetic mountain, is the anode or the cathode. And then this one over here would be the exact opposite. And that gives you 7, or the 7 mountains. All right, so Indiana Jones is looking for this. This is his purpose. In every single movie, this is essentially what's happening. Symbolically speaking, he represents some of us. Okay? There are those of us out there destined to walk this path, I think. So he's looking for the cross. He's looking for that light. He's looking for the truth. He's looking to extend his life. He's looking to make it past the terrible parts of the world so that he can enjoy the golden age. Also, speaking of the golden age, he's also wearing that yellow scarf or that yellow bandana, which is rocked by the 21 Pilots in some of their new music videos. The yellow color, remember, after the plasma apocalypse, after this next shift, the sky changes color, and the sky is always changing color, but it happens so slowly that most of us don't recognize it. The sun is changing color, the moon is changing color, the stars are probably changing colors. But whenever we go through these shifts, the entire sky and all of the light in our world changes spectrum. Right now, we live under mostly a white light. The sun is very white, so we have a broader range of colors. But whenever it goes back and all of that electricity and electromagnetic power shoots up out of the earth, because right now it's charging, it's inside. But whenever it's released and comes out of the earth in many different places, in many different openings, it creates an electrical arc that I was talking about earlier. All of the world will experience fog and mist and vapor all over the place, right? And the oceans are going to be pulled up into the sky. Many things are going to float. I've talked about this many different times, and that has to do with what was that guy's name? Archimedes. Archimedes principle, sorry. Because whenever the world depressurizes, it's going to create an equally strong buoyant force underneath, equal to however much atmosphere has escaped. So because of that, the ocean water is going to get pulled up into the sky. All of that ocean water contains a lot of salt, a high salt content. That ocean water, much of it, maybe not all of it, but much of it, will be up in our atmosphere and struck by strong electrical currents that are going to activate that salt or that sodium that's inside of it in the area of the northern electrical arc, which will light up our world. And if you want a good example of that, check out the low pressure sodium vapor lamp. That's a great study on a small scale of what you can expect to see in the future. So when those low pressure sodium vapor lamps turn on, initially for a split second, they're purple. Then they go right into like a red spectrum. And then whenever they calm down and when they've been on for a while, they start going more into the yellow. So it gets very bright, monotone yellow all over the place. So if somebody's wearing yellow in that type of an environment, it would actually be white. It would actually be you would see it as white, right? There wouldn't really be color in a monochrome environment. It would just be shades of light and dark, right? You wouldn't have any other colors to compare it to. You would essentially live in a black and white world. So by wearing the yellow color or the yellow bandana, or it could be red or anything, similar, orange, red, yellow, stuff like that. Basically you're saying, I am of the light. Symbolically speaking, in the new age, in the new world. All right. So then he says, everybody's lost but me. So he finds the cross. He jacks it from the guys who are just stealing it. Now they're stealing this artifact not because they want to share it with the world. They don't want to tell the people of the world that they found the Fountain of Youth symbolically, or the cross symbolically. They don't want to tell people that they found it. They want to sell it and get money or whatever. They don't want to share it with the rest of the world. So he steals it because he thinks it belongs in a museum. He wants people to learn from it. So he takes off. He can't find his troop anywhere. He says, everybody's lost but me. I can relate to that. I feel like many of you can too. There's many people that are lost, right? But because he deviated from the sightseeing tour that represents the masses of the world and mainstream academics and just the herd population of the earth. He deviated from all of that. He went looking for the cross. He's no longer lost. He's found. He knows where he is. He knows where he stands. Everybody else is lost though. They didn't grasp the most important part of that trip. They missed out, but he didn't because he went on an adventure. Then he jumps onto this train. Anytime you see trains in the movies, whether they be subway trains or regular trains or circus trains, especially circus trains, oftentimes that is symbolic of the plasma conduits that are outside of our world that are seen as being hallways I guess you could say, conduits that that drop off. Basically, when the sky opens up, stuff falls out of it. Stuff gets sucked up and disperses, but then other things can come in, right? Once the world depressurizes and it's done, other things can float on in. And this train represents every single type of thing that ancient legends and myths have described as coming from the sky. Killer clowns from outer space, aka the Anunnaki or the gods of old, the angels, etc., represented by the star. Of course, they're from the sky. And then we've got strange animals, right? There are tribes worldwide that talk about how animals came from the sky. All right, so he's on that train, and then he falls into the little snake area. So snakes oftentimes, or serpents, are symbolic of plasma, just because they're one animal that matches, kind of what plasma looks like the most. Sometimes it's a worm, sometimes it's a snake, etc., right? So he's inundated with plasma at this particular moment. The House of Reptiles is where he is. This is also where he gets his fear of snakes too, allegedly. The rhino is featured in this one right here. It's interesting to me because I have a theory that all animals, or many of them, that have this type of skin and this type of coloration, especially if they have big, huge horns sticking out of their face and stuff, they look alien. We don't consider them to be alien. We consider them terrestrial because they've been a part of our culture for so long. They've been appropriated into the Terra world that we live on, right? We got used to them, basically. The rest of the Phantazoids that were considered harmful and, not helpful, or predators, things that were more meat eaters and stuff like that, they were exterminated. They were hunted by those same kings and queens that paid people to go out and find those relics and those artifacts and to try to re-find the Fountain of Youth, which I have a theory about that too. I think that the world grows after each cycle, or maybe every other cycle, but I think that the world grows. And if that's true and the world does grow, even if you knew where the Fountain of Youth was, right, you will be in a different location if the world had grown since the last time. So you have to re-find the Fountain of Youth, essentially. The good news is it's always in the middle. It tends to always be in the middle. But anyways, here's an example of a modern Phantazoid, which is the rhino. The Rhinosaurus, actually. It's literally named like a dinosaur, right? Rhinosaur. It's a rhinosaur. The Rhinosaurus. Anyways. And then we have another one, right? A giant cat. This is a giant. That's a giant creature. Right? We all know what a cat looks like. I can't stress this enough. So many people have become used to lions and tigers and bears, right? That they don't consider their gigantic size to be strange any longer or abnormal, right? Even though they coexist with the exact same types of creatures that are smaller, like dogs and cats and stuff, right? This does not blow anybody's mind for some reason. These are leftovers from an old age. These are survivors who have survived mankind for years and years and years, for whatever reason, right? So Indiana Jones grabs his whip, and he whips, that's where he gets his little scar when he's a grown-up, I guess. So he's arguing with the guys about the cross. He says, this should be in a museum, right? A museum is a place where you are to consider things. It's specifically a place of thought. It's a place of thinking, right? So what he wants people to do is to look at the cross figure or the cross of Coronado or that symbolic element and to think about it. He wants people to meditate on that. Others just want to use it to get a bunch of money. All right, so he's starting to fight the bad guys. He's trying to take the cross away from them. You'll notice that he was in what's known as the Den of Lions, and lion symbolism is prolific throughout this entire movie. There's a lot of references to lions. Which we've talked about in a few other videos in the past as well. So he's there in the Den of Lions, and then he runs back to the caboose, and he's got the cross, and he hides in this magic box, right? Let's take a look at this magic box. Now, it's got these occult images on the top of it there. So symbolically, he has taken the cross that he wants people to consider and think about, and because the bad guys were looking for it, he made sure that it was hidden away, but behind this occult imagery. Are you picking up what I'm laying down? So the truth of the Fountain of Youth, the truth of the crucifix, the truth of Thor's hammer, and all these other symbolic elements that have been cartoonified over time have very real, actual, historic representations in our world, but they have been occulted. They have been put into a box and hidden from the bad guys, basically, right? If they're not completely hidden, if you know how to find them. If you know how this box works, then he could have easily found Indiana Jones and taken the cross or whatever. Anyways, so he runs home and they show you the mailbox. I brought this symbolism up many times. The post, right? The post is symbolic of the blue beam that shoots up into the sky. Many of those beams, they're posts, they're columns, right? And they're meeting places because those are the lights of the world where people will go. Right? It's a dark time. It's the dark ages. So people meet up at these posts, or they meet up at the bar that comes up out of the ground, right? They're watering holes, essentially. And it says Jones on there. So let's talk about that name. Now, first, we're going to break down Indiana. If you look up the word Indiana, it's directly related to India or Indian or Hindu. So if we look up Hindu, it is related to Shindu, which means river and sea in classical Sanskrit. It also has the implication to go or to move from the Proto-Indo-European root word. I can't say that one right now, but it means to go away, to move about, something that is always on the move and something that is going away. Those residents that once lived at the North Pole, at the Garden of Eden, at the paradise-type land or islands that is said to be at the middle of our world, in the center of the world at the North Pole, or at least once was, right? Every other cycle, they're forced out, right? Every other cycle, when that beam retracts and it goes back into the earth and there is no fountain of youth and it dries up, they have been populating on that island the entire time and they decide to spread out. And they do. And eventually, over time, they become lost tribes. They become people who have lost their identity, lost their origins, lost their way. And so they're seen as being people who are wanderers, people who, just roam about trying to find a new home, basically, because the rest of the world has been settled by other survivors, basically. So they're seen as chickens. Basically, that's sort of one of the symbolic elements. They run away, basically. So they will run away from the North Pole to go settle other places. When the blue beam returns, they're chickens and they run away from their homes that they have settled in a massive exodus, I guess you could call it, back to the Holy Land, back to the Fountain of Youth. It's an ebb and flow. Okay, so Jones. Jones is directly related. What was that one? We just did Indiana. So that was Indiana, okay? Indiana means river, essentially. It means to move about. Jones comes from the name John, which comes from Jan, J-A-N, like Janus, or Janos, or Janos, or Johann, right? There's many different variations of this particular word. The root of it, I believe, is Gan, G-N, right? In the ancient languages, sometimes letters became mixed up over time. So some people who pronounced a G, it turned into a J, and vice versa. And many other letters share that history. But G-N is Gan, and it means garden, right? Somebody of the garden. So Janus or Ganos means strong of the garden or strength of the garden, essentially, which is that pillar of light that comes up out of the center of the Garden of Eden. Here's an example of Janus, the two-faced god. Hey, what's up, Kimberly? Good to see you in the chat. All right, let's see. So Janus, I forgot why I put Janus up there, but I just wanted to point that out. All right, so Indiana Jones busts into his dad's office, right? His dad is a researcher. His dad has been studying very seriously the Fountain of Youth, aka the Holy Grail, for basically his entire life. So he busts in and he's like, "I got this cross, Dad." And he goes, "Wait." He says, "It's important." And his dad says, "Then wait. Count to 20. So this is pretty important. And I like this. Being a dad myself, I like how he's teaching his son to have patience, especially in those times when he's excited. to just calm down, right? To not allow his passion to rule over his reasoning or his ability to reason. His dad it's a little easier for him because he's older and he's had a lot of practice. Young Indiana Jones, though, is young and, ready to jump into adventure right away and super excited, wants to talk about it right away. Not always a good idea. In the ancient times, people were not allowed to just talk about some new revelation right away. There was like an age of accountability. There was a proving ground. There were rites and rites of passages and rituals and stuff that people would prove themselves, that they had come of age, essentially, in order to be guides or teachers or whatever, right? So his dad is teaching him, I believe, the right way. He says, count to 20. Oh, in Greek, which I also like. Don't count to 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No. So he switched the gears in his son's brain to slow him down on purpose, to downshift him. He said, no, don't do it in English. That's easy. Do it in Greek, which is going to force him to calm down and to try to really think about stuff, right? I like this. His dad, you can see some of what he's drawing. This is before the internet and stuff, so people drew these diaries. This is going to be a part of his Grail diary, which is what he's working on right now. And he says, may he who illuminated this illuminate me. That's my Sean Connery. So may he who illuminated this illuminate me. He's seeking illumination, right? Wait, we'll see if he finds it or not. Aren't we all? I'm seeking illumination, right? It's because the world is dark. It's really a dark world right now. One of my first truth in movies was Dark City, right? In a dark city, you seek illumination, right? Unless you're comfortable in the darkness, unless you're comfortable in ignorance. All right, so the cops come, the sheriff comes, and he's like, hey, do you have that cross? He's like, yeah, I got it right here. And these dudes were trying to take it, blah, blah, blah. And then the cop is like, yeah, these guys aren't going to press charges on you since you gave it back to me. So basically the cop was bought out by the rich mobster guy who hired these other guys to go find the artifacts. And this is symbolic in that the government is a part of it. The government is a part of working for the monarchies, the kings, the queens, the presidents, etc., and even what's known as the hidden hand behind the government or the secret governments. Those people who it's pretense that that they're here for you, that they're here to protect you or whatever. Like they're not. They are people like this guy in the movie. This guy right here, the marshal, is basically a fancy hired goon. Okay? He's like a bodyguard. So Indiana Jones went to the wrong dude. He should not have called the police and tried to turn that in. And then this is the rich guy. Now let's take a look at the rich guy who's been looking for this artifact, the guy who's paying people off, right? First and foremost, he's wearing the black and white symbolism, which to me symbolizes space travel or fractalverse travelers, those people who go and bounce from world to world as sliders, experiencing, different alternate Earths and whatnot. They also get to leave a confined realm, which allows, the conditions are different out there in the heavens, to allow for longer lifespans, essentially, right? So they can bounce from world to world as long as they escape that world in time so that they don't start aging, which you're going to see here in this movie. Aging is a huge part of it. That looks like Bruce Willis right next to him. But take a look at the carnation. You see that little flower? Everything is black and white, representing the space travelers, the fallen angels, whatever you want to call them. And then he's got this carnation, this red flower that's pretty prolific. It reminded me of Logan's Run, this old 70s movie. I have not broken this movie down, but it's a pretty good one. I don't like a lot of older movies, but this one's pretty good, symbolically speaking. There's this weird ritual in Logan's Run where these people surround this flower-looking crystal flower thing, this red flower. It looks a lot like his carnation. They surround it. These people are all wearing leotards or spandex or whatever that has flames on it. So they represent like the plasma, basically. And then that flower represents the all-seeing eye in the sky that opens up, and it's basically a red hole in the sky. Some people will see it as Nibiru. Some people will see it as a planet that's about to crash into us or whatever, because they've been trained to see anything that's circular up in the sky as being spherical in nature. When in reality, it's just a hole that opened up in the sky. It doesn't even have substance to it. It's just a window, right? But anyways, so these people, they surround it and then they all start floating up into the air. It's insane. All right, so he gives the cross back to the head honcho of all the bad guys there, and he's got a bag of money. Dave Ryan, what's up? Nice to meet you. Welcome to my channel. Thanks for joining us. So this guy, the bad guy, pays him and he gets the cross, right? That's because that cross, what it represents, which is the fountain of youth, is invaluable, okay? Like all the money in the world would not be enough to buy that piece of land. Now, I'm gonna throw a huge hint out there. I haven't talked about this a lot, but I will make a video about it. And if I don't, remind me. There seems to be a huge fight over that particular piece of land, a huge war that erupts between those who land on that land and those who flock to that land. Why? Because of what that land contains. This guy with the black and white represents those who land on that land, and they want to have control of it. They want to keep control of that land because that land seems to be energetically entwined with the destiny of mankind. Whoever is in control of that land seems to be able to use it, or the magic from it, or the power or the strength from it, to influence the future, or to influence the rest of the world from that point on. So there's basically a battle between good and evil to claim that land, I'll say. All right, so we move on to the future, and it's the same bad guy, but he's an old man. He's still wearing the black and white suit that still fits him, and he still has that red carnation. He goes, "Small world, Dr. Jones." And Dr. Jones doesn't miss a beat. He says, "Too small for the two of us." Right? So too small for the two of us. It's too small. There's not enough room in here for the fallen angels and the survivors, etc. So there tends to be this this conflict between what are known as the strong ones and the beautiful ones, the Azir and the Vanir, the two classes of survivors. All right. Actually, one's not even a survivor. One is a surviving class. The other one are just visitors, people who have just arrived on the scene because the door opened, basically. "This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you." So this is the second time. This is a back and forth thing. If this went on, right, because this does go on. This guy ends up dying in just a minute or something, allegedly, right? But this is an age-old story. He's going to continue one person, the bad guys, are going to steal the cross. Okay, or the blue beam, or whatever words you'd like to use, okay, for an item of superpower on the earth. They're going to try to steal it, and they will. And then the next time, the good guys will try to steal it back, and then the bad guys will try to steal it back. It's a fight for Mount Meru. It's a fight for the future of the world. He says that belongs in a museum. So do you. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, he kind of does belong in the museum, really. People should think about what he's doing. Now, let's dig into the backstory of Indiana Jones. What does he do when he's not out there adventuring? You know what I mean? How does he pay for all those excursions? He's a professor at a college. He's a teacher. So the first thing he does is write the word fact up there on the chalkboard. And he goes, "Fact, not truth." Now, this is really interesting. You're going to see a side of Indiana Jones that you don't normally associate with Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is a truth seeker in his spare time. But whenever he needs to like put on the mask of being just like everyone else and having a job and stuff, he goes through the motions as well, right? He's a teacher and he's basically telling people like, you know, I'm not here to tell you the truth. I'm here to deal with fact and science and all this stuff. But you can see that he contradicts himself when he goes off on his adventures. He's doing what he's paid to do right now. He's doing what the government pays him to do. He says, "So forget any ideas that you have about lost cities, exotic travel. We do not follow maps to buried treasure. And X never, ever marks the spot." He contradicts every single one of those statements in this movie. They did that purposefully. They wrote that into the script purposefully to give us a breadcrumb. Linda Ray, hey, thanks for your support. Good to see you. To give us a breadcrumb to show us what's really happening in our world, right? Take a look at what he drew on the chalkboard. Let's take a quick little look at this. I find these things interesting, the things that they draw in the background. The word literal, the word rush construction, and what appears to be a dome. Isn't that interesting? Literal rush construct, I should say, not construction, but a construct, similar thing, right? And he's got a dome. He's got the ground right there, and there's a dome right there. It says literal right there in front of you. Little breadcrumbs that the movies gives to us, right? Interesting stuff. He says we can't afford to take mythology at face value. There's some truth to that, right? There are many myths and legends around the world that have been cartoonified, right? So for example, at face value, you would be chasing some little artifact that's a golden cross or something like that. That's the face value. That's the cartoonification. But so that does not mean that you throw the baby out with the bathwater and that there's no truth to it at all, right? All right, so class is dismissed and Marcus comes in. Marcus owns a museum. That's basically who Indiana Jones works for. They're two sides of the same coin, Jones and the other black and white bad guy or whatever. They're both doing the same thing. And Indiana Jones is getting paid to give Marcus that thing, just like the bad guys were getting paid to give it to the other guy. But the difference is Marcus is going to put it on display. He's going to make it public so that people can have access to it if they want to inquire or learn or study or research. Now, Dr. Jones leaves the classroom. All these people are lined up to ask him a million questions. He can't hear who's talking. He doesn't know what's going on. He's doing the secret thing. That's why I took a picture of that, right? Because he knows secrets. And he can't tell these kids. As you just saw, he told these kids basically the opposite of the truth, right? I have found that the truth is best told in story form, all across time. That way, those who are not looking for the truth are amused, or they are not thinking. They are entertained. Those who are looking for the truth glean from those stories, and they can hear what's really being said, basically. All right, so he jumps out of the back window to try to get away from all the students who are just mobbing all around him, and he gets mobbed by some mobsters, basically, who are like, you're coming with us. So they take him to this guy. His name is Donovan, Walter Donovan. He comes in. He's also wearing black and white. Also with, whoopsh. Oh, it's Alexander the Great right there. I didn't even see that, I think. Anyways, he's also wearing the red rose or the red carnation, right? The red flower. Same thing. That's exactly why the bad guys are wearing this. And this guy is a bad guy, or he will become one. He says, my name's Walter Donovan. So let's look up Walter. Comes from Valdan. The Proto-Indo-European root word is val or wall or val, if you want. And it means to be strong. So Walter is val, which means strong, and hari, which means host or army. Together it means a strong army, basically. Donovan means dark brown. That's interesting too, because brown means light. So his name, Donovan, translates into a dark light. That's interesting. Have you ever seen dark light? I have. It looks like a black spirit, basically. It depends on the lighting conditions. But anyways, so he's got this little marker that he found, this rock with all this ancient writing on it and a picture of a broken cross. And he says, where did this come from? Now, pay attention to what he's about to say, because it was just tossed in there real casually, and I feel like a lot of people may have missed this. Remember, everything in the script is important, okay? It all is context to the deeper story that's being told. He says, my engineers unearthed it, so they dug this up out of the ground, in the mountain region. There's another mountain reference. North, there's another northern reference, of Ankara. Interesting. Now, Ankara is a real place, probably most popular for being the home of King Midas, right? Whatever he touched turned into gold. So it's associated with gold by extension by way of King Midas there. And it says here, Midas was also the legendary founder of the city of Ankara, Ankara or Ankira. It's pronounced different ways, which today is the capital of Turkey. My men found this while excavating for copper. Now here's another interesting correlation. Check this out. Remember this for the future, for the rest of this movie, okay? Because it's going to come into play. This is half of a marker. The markers that they're looking for, there's going to be two of them, lead the way to what is in the middle, the Grail, the cup of Christ, the holy Grail, or the fountain of youth. This marker is associated with copper. They found it while digging up copper. We've talked about the Copper Mountain symbolism before. Hey, Martin Moore, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, so let's move on. Remember the copper reference. All right, so he's pouring some champagne and he says, "Let them bring me to your holy mountain." Okay, so he's reading the transcription on the text on that marker. "Let them bring me to your holy mountain." That's talking about going to Mount Meru, where that light is, okay? The place of safety. "In the place where you dwell." Now, that's interesting. Bring me to your holy mountain in, not at, not on, but in the place where you dwell. That's the seat of God. That's the throne of God. That's the temple of God. Because what is sometimes interpreted as God or a God or whatever, however you want to call it, right? Is that inner earth energy, that electromagnetic source or that plasma that comes up out of that mountain, right? And provides healing benefits and many different benefits to the world during the age that it is seen. In the place where you dwell, across the desert and through the mountain. This is really interesting because I knew what was going on with this way before I was even into the plasma apocalypse. They're actually disclosing to you the location of the Holy Grail. Like, according to the ancient myths and legends and stuff, this is, if you follow these directions, you'll get there. Across the desert and through the mountain. Remember that. Remember, like, through the mountain, like, gosh, there's so many references, but the Lord of the Rings, right? Whenever they have to go through that mountain, and inside of that mountain was a freaking ghost army, right? Anyways, to the canyon of the crescent moon. Oh, Freight Train. Hey, good to see you. Thanks for the comment. Super appreciate you. All right, so to the canyon of the crescent moon, to the temple where the cup that holds the blood of Jesus Christ resides forever. So this is all cartoonification. This is all symbolic elements that represent an actual place, an actual physical substance in our world. The Holy Grail, Dr. Jones. What does grail mean? The word is perhaps ultimately from the Latin word crater. Is that mind-blowing? Let that sink in for just a bit, right? The Holy Grail literally means the holy crater of the earth, basically. Crater or bowl, which is from the Greek krater, which means a bowl, especially one for mixing wine with water, which is what happens during the apocalypse, right? You have the wine, the red of the sky coming down, all that red plasma coming down and mixing with the water, the pure water that comes. Mount Meru is surrounded by pure water. Okay, so even though it's ocean water, it is not salt water. Okay, there's a crystal clear, no impurities water up there, and then it starts to gain impurities as it goes out into the world. But yeah, they're looking for the holy crater, not the holy cup. Like they're looking for a bowl of the earth. It's an earth bowl. Let's see if we can find an earth bowl on the ancient maps real quick. If you take a look at the land said to be at the North Pole, you can see it is all a valley. It is 360 degrees encircled because it is a crater in the middle of the world. That's amazing. The holy crater, the Holy Grail. The chalice used by Christ during the Last Supper. So let's check this out. So this is the bowl. This is the crater, right? This is the Holy Grail that caught the blood of Jesus when he was being crucified. So right there in the middle, shooting up out of that mountain, which is Mount Meru. Let's zoom in, right? Rupus Nigra, right there. A beam shoots straight up out of that, right? Now we zoom back out. That beam becomes a cross. That beam becomes the beam that Odin hung upon, or the tree that Odin hung upon, and the cross of Jesus, etc. There's many, many different references to this, right? And at that exact same site is where manna, or this food of the gods, this liquid, this holy honey, or whatever you want to call it, of the gods, rained down from the sky and filled that entire valley with this electromagnetically charged substance that was created whenever the plasma shot up and interacted with our atmosphere, right? So basically it rains down this stuff that's sort of gooey that you can eat. And energizes you. It charges you. You don't need to eat regular food or drink, water or anything like that. All you need is this manna because it's pure energy, basically. So that is the blood of the figure that is seen, the cosmic plasma figure that is seen in the middle of this bowl that catches the blood, so to speak, right? Hey, Harry. Harry, good to see you. Welcome to my channel. The chalice that was used by Christ during the Last Supper. The Last Supper is a fancy way of saying Pesach, or the Passover, okay? The Passover is the Last Supper, symbolically speaking, okay? They prepare to have a last meal before the apocalypse, essentially. The cup that caught his blood at the crucifixion, we've talked about that, and he entrusted the cup to Joseph of Arimathea. This gets into more cartoonification and symbolic imagery and stuff, but let's look this up. Joseph of Arimathea. Now, Joseph actually is Yosef, meaning God will give. So, God will give Arimathea. So, what does Arimathea mean? So, that Mathia portion of Arimathea is where you get the word Matthew, or the name Matthew, Mathia, right? It's a gift of God. So Joseph of Arimathea is God will give a gift himself. God will personally give a gift. Era or Ara means light. So God gives the gift of light is Joseph of Arimathea translated. So then he goes into teacher mode. And he's all, suspicious about it, even though I'm sure he's interested. He's like the Arthur legend. It is the Arthur legend. Everything about King Arthur and many other cartoonified type historical figures that represent these actions and events that take place every other cycle. These legends are real. This is what you're watching, right? The Arthur legend, the sword and the stone, Excalibur, this is what this is. The gift of youth to whoever drinks from the grail. And he's super old, so he's like, I'm finding this. I'm spending all the money in the world to find this, right? The Grail tablet speaks of deserts and mountains and canyons. It's pretty vague. He makes a good point. It is pretty vague. Where do you want to start looking? That's a pretty important question in this movie. Where do you want to start looking? He says it disappeared and was lost for 1,000 years. Well, that's interesting. That's an eon. That's an age, essentially, right? It's a vague term for how long it lasts from that blue beam coming up out of the ground to the time when it retracts. Or opposite, the time it retracts to the time that it makes its reappearance. That is an epoch. That is an age. That is an era. That is how we count time in this world. That is how we mark time in this world. So it's interesting to me that he says that the fountain of youth, the Holy Grail, was lost for 1,000 years before it was found again by 3 knights of the First Crusade. 3 knights, 3 witnesses, 3 Marys that were there in the Jesus stories. Oh, thank you so much. Hold on, I got a super chat. Getaway Sounds says, appreciate all the esoteric knowledge and wisdom. Hey, you're super welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving forward. He says, now it doesn't reveal the location of the Grail, right? But the knight promised that 2 markers that had been left behind would reveal the location of the Grail. So if you can find those 2 markers, right, you'll know exactly where the Grail is because it's in between the 2. It's the 2 witnesses on either side of it. The tablet is one of those markers. The tablet is a fancy word for mountain, right? Sometimes they call them tabletop mountains, volcano, etc., right? The tablet is one of those markers. So he says, why don't you talk to my father? Your father's the man who's disappeared, he says. All right, so his dad now he has to do it, right? His dad was basically kidnapped by some Nazis, you'll find out here in a bit. And he goes home and he sees that his dad mailed him the Grail diary, right? Every clue that he followed, every discovery that he made was written down. I love this so much because I can resonate. I've had my own version of the Grail diary, maybe not the Grail diary, but my own little diaries of my own little notes and stuff. It becomes very valuable when you write that stuff down yourself instead of just collecting a bunch of books written by other people. Whenever you have your very own notes, it's a good feeling. I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's great. All right, we're going to look at this Grail Diary and check out some of these pictures too throughout this movie. Now, first and foremost, we've got this image, very popular, of the Crusade Knight, the Knight of the Crusade or whatever, who walks across this cliff. You're going to see this later on in the movie, and he grabs the Grail. He's floating, everybody else is falling. And then we've got this picture right here. There was something here I wanted to point out, but I can't remember what it was. Let me see. Let me go to the next one. All right, hold on. Let me zoom in because there's all kinds of little, this is very detailed for being a movie prop. Note the crosses on the shield. Yes, so I'm going to talk about those crosses here in a bit. And it says, a part of the Franciscan friar manuscript. Anyways, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that page. Let's check out this next page. See that sword? That's the blue beam. That's Excalibur right there. That's why it's in there, and that's why it's directly related to the Grail or the Crater, the Holy Crater, the Holy Grail, etc. So let's zoom in on this one because there is something in here that I thought was interesting. The Order of the Grail could have been the same sword drawn from the stone by Arthur. Right? Okay. Now you see the little cross right there. That represents the 4 rivers that separate the 4 lands on each side. You know, boom, 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 boom. Those are also the 4 corners of the earth, according to tradition. Very interesting. So it's Excalibur, right? The fountain of youth, the cup of Christ, etc. is another word for that is Excalibur. Let's see. I'm not going to get too much into the rest of that page right now. So let's move forward. Oh, I already read that part. All right. So he says, why would he have sent this to me? I don't know why I took a picture of that. He says, now be very careful. Don't trust anybody. This is the guy that hired him. Okay. He's telling him not to trust anybody. He doesn't do that. He ends up trusting the guy who hires him and some girl and stuff. He gets very distracted. You got to be careful, right? And I wouldn't say don't trust anybody. I would say trust people who you already trust or trust people who proved their worth. You know what I mean? Just like I was talking about earlier about there's testing grounds, there's rites of passage, etc., right? Don't just trust somebody just because they say something that sounds true. Trust people's actions. You know what I mean? Trust that allow people to prove things for themselves. I left your father working in the library. So here's the blonde chick that's the distraction in the movie, basically. And she was working with Indiana's dad. He sent me to the map section. Martin Moore. Hey, thanks, Martin Moore. Super appreciate it. Thank you very much. Oh, I like your little Indiana Jones picture too. All right, so he sent me to the map section to fetch an ancient plan of the city. Check this out. In the movie, they're looking for the Fountain of Youth. They're looking for the Holy Grail. One of the first things they do is look at the old maps in this old ancient portion of the city. They have to reverse engineer history, essentially, right? They have to pull up all the old stuff, not modern, not the new maps, the old ones, which are very valuable. So we go to this place right here, which is sort of the library, and he says, that doesn't look much like a library. Let's take a look at this place, because this is a real place, I think in Italy. First, you'll notice that there are no windows anywhere on this building, right? You'll see that there are these 4 columns on the front-facing side, and in the middle, they have these little mini columns with a pyramid on the top. When you see that, it represents Mount Meru, okay? They have a giant door for giants to go into. There are no windows in this place because this is a place of power, as I like to call it. Usually they built these types of structures on top of cavernous inner earth systems, basically holes in the earth that allow that positive inner earth energy to seep up and out, and it's collected and stored in this building so that it doesn't just seep out into the atmosphere. And then they would have people come into these buildings and be healed. Right? Instead of having to go all the way down into the earth, into a cave or something, they just allowed that inner earth healing energy to come up, and they just collected it in these types of what are known as cathode buildings or cathedrals. They would oftentimes line the walls with pipe organs so that they could program the vibrations and the frequencies in order to fine-tune what type of healing was given. Isn't that something? It doesn't look much like a library. It looks like a converted church. Check out the top of it, right? There's a triangle with a circle right there in the middle. That is the all-seeing eye imagery, or the symbolism at the top. You see that? When they have the triangle and the circle in the middle, that's the typical Illuminati symbol and stuff like that. All right, so here's the actual building, and it says a church at the site was built in the 9th century, but destroyed by fire in 1105. So check this out. This building right here, the actual one for the movie, was built in the 9th century, 800 and something AD. But it was destroyed by fire basically 300 years later. Now, this building was destroyed by fire. Okay, that's what it says. Then, almost 250 years later, it was reconstructed in its present form in the year 1776. How many buildings have you ever known of were just completely destroyed and just gone for 250 years, and then all of a sudden they're just rebuilt? Like, you know what I mean? It's interesting things, an interesting little backstory to that. All right, so they go inside of this library. I hope I'm not going too slow. Sometimes I feel like when I take a long time, it's kind of slow, so I tend to talk faster. But there's a lot of cool stuff to cover, so I'm just going to take my time on this one. So they go into the library, and the Nazi chick says, "We are on holy ground." That's what that's called. A place of power, or holy ground, is where the ground is set apart, where the ground is different, where the ground is receiving some sort of an electrical or energetic charge. So it's called holy ground, right? They're standing on one of those places of power. Now let's take a closer look here. Now before I get into that, I want to show you in the background here, you can see that there's going to be these columns. I don't know if I could see those columns right there. So here's a column, and there's going to be two other columns on this side over here. Right here, you're going to see that there are what look like tombstones, which they're not. They're electrical arcs. And I'm going to show you, dang, I put these out of order. So let me come back to that. So there's the 4 columns right there. Now, if you look in the middle of the picture here, let's take a closer look at this picture. So there's a stained glass window. They didn't want any of that energy coming out. This is not a regular window. This is not a window you could just open up and allow a fresh breeze to come in. They didn't want that. That was against the whole purpose of the building. The building was designed to keep the energy inside. They would usually have small windows in these cathedrals in order to vent some of that out, right? If they needed to vent, or if there was too much or something, they could vent out a little bit of that vril energy, or whatever you want to call it, that was inside. But check this out. See these Roman numerals? These play a huge part in the movie. One of these little arcs or arches has the Roman numeral 3. The central arch has the Roman numeral 7, and the one off to the right has the Roman numeral 10. So let me go back here in my images, because I got these kind of mixed up at first, but you can find these in Freemasonry. Exact same symbolism. The columns represented by the Roman numerals, there's one difference, and that's the central pillar. I'll explain to you why it's different. The left side has the Roman numeral 7. The right side has the Roman numeral 3. That's so mind-blowing to me. And the middle has the Vav, or the Roman numeral 5, right? These are those 3 Marlenas. These are the 3 Marys. These are the 3 magnificent mountains. You have the middle one, which represents Mount Meru, which is the Vav of the world, or the hook of the world, the thing that connects the earth to the sky, etc. Then you have the 7, which represents the 7 mountains, which I did that whole video on, right? The 7 other lights around Mount Meru, including Mount Meru. And then you have 3, which are the giant 3 lights or sky beams, right? The anode, the cathode, and then the neutral path, the middle way. Also, there's the black and white checkerboard floor, etc., the black and white space traveling symbolism. There's all kinds of stuff in there. But I wanted to point that out, that they have those columns and they have those same exact Roman numerals, or very close to the ones in the movie. Here's another example. This has 7 on the left, the V or the Vav in the middle, and the 3 on the right, the 3 columns, the three pillars. Here's another one right here, where you've got the 3 columns. you've got the Roman numeral 7, the V in the middle, and the 3, the Roman numeral 3. Just exactly how you see in the movie. And they make a huge point of this in the movie. The Roman numeral 3, the 7, and then there's an X. Now, they're a little out of order here in the movie, and I think that there's reasons for that too, but I don't want to get too deep into it right now. So they start looking for these. 3. The number 3 is on one of these pillars on one side, right? Which is the anode or the cathode. 7, boom, it's on the other side of the stained glass window. Now they have to find the middle one. Now the middle one on the Freemasonic portraits and pictures and stuff is represented by the Vav or the letter V, because that represents the sky hook, the sky pillar that shoots up out of the earth, right? We've talked about that many times. But they changed it, right? Because in this movie, it's not specifically the beam that they're looking for. The beam is a part of it, okay? But remember, Grail means crater. And that crater is represented by an X, by those 4 rivers that cut the land and make an X shape. That also has a circle around it. So he says 10, 10, where's the 10? So in order to find the 10, aka the Tet, or the land at the middle, the North Pole lands that's cut into 4 different sections, right? Which makes an X. In order to find that, he has to go up high and look down at the ground. He goes up a spiral staircase, like Jacob's ladder style, looks down at the ground and realizes he was standing on the X all along, the 10, the Tet. And he says X marks the spot, the exact opposite of what he taught his students in school, right? Saying X never ever marks the spot. Boom, X does mark the spot. And there's a reason why we put an X in the spot in order to mark it, because the letter X in ancient languages literally means a marker. It means to mark something, and it comes from the shapes of the earth. Here's an example of just the 3 pillars or the 3 beams and, you know, what it might look like, sort of my artist rendition. I've shown that before. The 7 mountains, the 7 mountain mandate, which I talked about in my other videos. And there's X marks the spot in the middle of the Holy Grail, or the Holy Crater. Boom. All right, so what do they have to do? Well, they found the X right there in the middle. Well, what's in the middle of the X? Let's check that out to understand better why they're doing what they're doing next. This is a cavernous entrance. This is the Cave of Saviors. This is a plasma volcano. This is an entrance into the hollow recesses of our world. So they need to go into the earth, right in the middle of the X. So they open up the floor. They actually go down into the earth. They see some drawings on the wall, these ancient drawings, and the girl's like, what's this one? What is that? Let's take a look at it. Some of you already know because you've seen the movie. But if you take a look at this, the drawing is the Ark of the Covenant. It's the anode angel and the cathode angel creating an electrical arc over the Holy Grail, or the island in the middle. So he's like, yeah, it's the Ark of the Covenant. And she's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was in my first movie, right? I think it was the first movie. I can't remember. Yeah, it was the first movie. So he says they're looking for the other marker, right? So they found one of the markers. They need another one so they can know where to go, because it's going to be in the middle of both of them. He says it's the same as on the Grail tablet. So he found another one. Now check that out. The first one had something to do with copper. This one is on another type of metal. So it's another metallic marker, essentially. I'm not sure what kind of metal this one's associated with. I forgot. Oh, now they're being followed by these guys. How are these guys dressed? Do they also have a flower, right? Also have the flower symbolism in the same exact spot. I'm telling you, it's insane. This blows my mind. Like they're not hiding things in plain sight. We're just blind, okay? But once you see it, you can start to see it everywhere, especially in the movies. Now, they say that, like, you know, they're down there walking around in like petroleum or something. So this guy's going to take his little match and drop it into the petroleum and light everything on fire, which blows my mind, because if you take a look at Indiana Jones and his little friend, she's holding a torch, which is constantly dripping fire down into the same thing. So this part didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I understand why they did it. Anyway, so there's this huge fire that rushes through. This is also symbolic of the fire of the earth, the pyramid, the fire amid, the fire inside, the light that is inside of our world that rushes through, etc. And then they escape that particular area because the fire is going everywhere. And these guys are chasing them down. The guys with the little red carnation or whatever it was, they're chasing them down with the little, what are those hats called that they were wearing? I forgot. Doctor Who likes them. I forgot what those are called. But it's interesting because I see those popping up all over the place. So he's like, why are you trying to kill us? And he says, because you're looking for the Holy Grail. Yeah, like there are agencies out there that have taken position in the most important land in our world, set up camp, and then they have their bullies, their little fraternities and stuff go around worldwide, keeping people away. They want to secure that land. They want control, essentially, right? He says, you're looking for the Grail, so that's our job. Our job is to take you out. If you get too close to the Holy Grail, no, that's something we start taking seriously. And they've been doing it, as you'll see in the movie, for like thousands of years, basically. The secret of the Grail has been safe for 1,000 years, he says. And then he's like, doing a little Superman action. He says, for all that time, the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword have been prepared to do anything to keep it safe. Now, here's the interesting thing. This guy, even though he was trying to kill Indiana Jones, he sort of kind of represents like the good guys that want to protect the mountain or protect the holy crater or whatever, the land at the North Pole. Take a look at his tattoo, the cruciform sword. I got hiccups, sorry. So this is the plasma beam. It shoots straight up into the air. At the top, it bends upwards, right? Because of the electromagnetics that and how it works towards the top of the world. In the middle, it shoots out sideways, the neutral point, and then you've got these little ladders, these little rings in a ladder that shoot out from that blue beam. Sorry, 1 second. All right. Something did not agree with my stomach or something. All right, so compare that. The cruciform tattoo, the cruciform sword tattoo, compare that to plasma physics and take a look. These over here are images, petroglyphs that people have found worldwide. This one literally looks like a cup or a grail or something like that. These are known as cartoonifications, basically, is what I call them, of Jacob's ladder. You could call it the tree of life, etc. This one looks exactly like that. So if the higher up it goes, the more it starts branching out in the middle. And this is what it looks like if it's very short. So if you extend this, instead of having one ring here, you'll start to see many rings. Also looks kind of like this from a side view. And this was done in a lab to recreate that. He says, your father is being held in the castle Brunwald. Interesting because it's a castle. Brun means brown, which is also the original name of Doc Brown in Back to the Future, right? They were the Von Brauns or whatever. Brun, Braun, same stuff. It means shining, basically. So the castle that shines, the shiny castle. The strong, shiny castle. Or the castle with the strong shine, or the strong light, essentially, right? A map with no names. Okay, so, time out. Let me get back to Castle Brunwald real quick. So his father is being held in Castle Brunwald, not at Castle Brunwald or anything. It's inside of it because it represents Mount Meru that is currently being occupied by evil forces or by bad guys, basically. So he's being held inside of the castle or inside of Mount Meru. They're looking for a map with no names. And then they actually show you a picture of the map, which is really interesting. It says he knew the course that it turned south through the desert to a river. So let's break this down and see if we can figure out if they're talking about the North Pole real quick, right? So we've got this this valley in the middle, which allegedly is like where to find it, basically. And it says that he knew the course, that it turned south through the desert to a river. And the river led into the mountains here. Okay, this is all very interesting. This goes back to, this is just one version of an ancient map that shows the North Pole that I like to pull up from time to time. Sometimes they have this land finished, sometimes they don't. But as you can see in this particular form, it's got what looks like a crescent shape to the valley or whatever that surrounds it. But I want to show you the ocean around this, okay? Now, take a look at all the land that's here and try to remove the ocean, because that ocean water is going to get sucked up and pulled out of our world as it does every other cycle. And then every other cycle after that, it's reintroduced and the world floods, okay? So this ocean water was not always there, which means if you remove all of that, it's going to be a desert. It's It's going to be nothing but sand all over the place. And probably a high electrical charge in that particular area as well. So this is the desert that they would have to cross if that water was not there. Right now, under the blue sky, the water is there. But that water will disappear one day, and then that will be replaced with a great desert, basically. All right, there's the Castle Brunwald, showing you like that there's a lightning storm happening as well. You get the electricity. Now he comes in, he has to pretend to be Scottish, which is super funny. He says, "And not before time did you intend to leave us standing on the doorstep all day. Achoo!" And he totally spits on this dude. Super funny. He says, "Now look, I've gone and caught a snaffle." He says, "If you are a Scottish lord, then I am Mickey Mouse," which totally cracks me up because he's pretending to be a Scottish lord. To me, this is just kind of personal because you can buy land in Scotland. Like I bought 1 square foot of land in Scotland. If you do that, it makes you a lord. Technically, you inherit the title of lord in Scotland. So he's pretending to be a Scottish lord. I sort of pretend to be a Scottish lord because I bought some land out there or whatever. So I have a certificate that says I'm a Scottish lord. I think it's fun. It's fun. It's a good time. So just like how he's pretending, I pretend to. It's fun. If you are a Scottish lord, then I am Mickey Mouse. Also, this guy's wearing the black and white symbolism. Indiana Jones goes up to rescue his father, who's locked away in one of the towers. And he says, "Oh, it's you, Junior." And then they both do this, right? The father and the son, right? One after another. These are representative of Atlas, right? Or the beam that shoots up and then spreads out at the top, and it's seen as holding its hands up. The symbol, the image of peace, right? I'm not going to harm anything. I'm peaceful, right? And that's why people put their hands up. I mean, they say it's to show that I don't have any weapons. You don't have to do that to show that you don't have any weapons. There's many ways to show you don't have weapons. You know what I mean? That's where these things come from somewhere. All right, so they go back down to the Nazis, and I kind of wanted to point out some stuff here in this picture. I might come back to it, though. I'm going to look at the fireplace. I want to show you this fireplace here in just a minute. All right, so they tie up the Jones boys, Indiana Jones and his father, together. The Nazis are totally looking for it. Now, this correlates with real life. Hitler literally had secret organizations and groups and sometimes directed his entire country to go on these missions to look for these holy relics, okay? I don't know if you know this, but he took like an entire armada down to Antarctica, like 100 years ago. I don't know how long ago, but it was like a long time ago. Why? That long ago? Why are you going to Antarctica with your whole fleet? You know what I mean? And the official story was because they needed to like hunt whales to make butter or something, right? I'm not believing the Nazi butter story or whatever. Hitler was looking for the spear of destiny. He was looking for the fountain of youth, basically. All right, so they tie these guys up. Everything's starting to catch on fire, etc. And he says, "Head for the fireplace." Now, the fireplace is where there is fire inside. It's kind of opposite in this particular scene. But it's very highly symbolic, okay? Our world has a fireplace, which is Mount Meru. It is the pyramid of the world. Pyramid means light inside or fire inside of, right? But whenever it's shooting up, that is whenever it is the pyramid or the fire is inside of it shooting out. But when it retracts, it's an empty fireplace. You can go inside of it or whatever, just like they do, and find safety when all the world around you is burning. Now, take a look at the fireplace. Have you already seen it? Just like Indiana Jones and his father did earlier. That wasn't a very good picture. Hold on, let me see. Right? Atlas. They're doing the hands up on each side, exactly like how him and his father had just done. So they go into the recesses of Hod Mimi's Holt, or the fireplace of the world. They become the chimney sweeps. I don't know, that's a Mary Poppins reference or whatever. But that's a place of safety when the rest of the world is burning. When everything all around you is burning, there's one place said to be safe, which is Mount Meru. The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's a race against evil. If it is captured by the Nazis, the armies of darkness will march over the face of the earth. Let's think about what he said. I'm going to say it without the accent. Look how damn serious he looks too. I love this. 'Cause that's how serious I am about it too. Um, I'm more serious in my personal life. I try to be, more carefree and stuff so that people. I don't like to instill a lot of fear in people because I'm talking about a lot of weird, strange things that are unknown concept. That the world has forgotten about it. So I try to lighten the blow, basically. He says it's a race against evil. The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's not about finding something just to know that it's there. It's important. It's a race against evil. Evil is looking for the Grail. Didn't I just talk about that? I'm not saying Hitler was evil or anything like that. I don't want to judge. Pardon me. But I am saying the governments of the world have been looking for this for quite some time. If it is captured by the Nazis, the armies of darkness will march all over the face of the earth. Doesn't it seem like that's already happened? Now we go to these book burnings. This is something that actually happened in Germany of yesteryear. And they gathered together various types of books. I want to clarify, it was not every book. I don't know how well versed people are into these things that have happened, okay, or allegedly happened. But they were specific types of books that were burned. So it wasn't just we're just burning all the books because we hate books. So also there's the symbol, right, that you see back there. I'm not sure like how much I can actually talk about all of that because of sensitivity issues. But that symbol represents the plasma that is seen in the sky. Right? That comes down and it starts to spiral because the wind is kicking up and the wind affects plasma too. So at first it just comes straight out, but once it hits the jet stream, then it becomes crooked and the plasma starts to spiral one way during one cycle and then the other way during the other cycle. All right, so here we have Hitler is actually about to march right through this particular book burning, and they're trying to find the Grail diary before it gets burned. And he says, "My boy, we are pilgrims in an unholy land." And then they show you all of the books burning. Also back here is the phoenix too. I want to show you this. This is, sometimes they'll say it's an eagle or something, but it's really not. Birds don't do this. This is a symbolic cartoonification of the plasma that shoots up, creating the image of the thunderbird looking left or looking right, or the image of the phoenix, or whatever bird you would like to put in place of that. That's what that represents, basically. Birds don't look like that unless they've been ran over by a car. Okay, they don't ever look like that. They don't just fan their wings straight out to the side. I don't even know if they can do that. I'm pretty sure the wings go backwards up behind them. So yeah. Definitely a symbolic element. So he's talking to the girl, the blonde chick, and she says, "I believe in the Grail, not the swastika." And he's like, "Okay, whatever." Some of this, I'm sorry, I was probably just I was entertained by it. Oh, so then he's pushed, right? So he grabs the diary from her, and then he's pushed, like runs into Hitler, and he's got the diary right in front of him. He has the thing. This is why it's ironic. Okay. Some people have no idea about Hitler or why he's doing what he does and what he's actually doing and what he's trying to look for and stuff. There's a whole, that's not going to be a part of this video, but it's very interesting to study. The book that can lead Hitler directly to what he has allegedly been looking for this entire time is right in front of him, but he doesn't realize what it is, right? And Professor Jones or Dr. Jones or whatever is just like, shit, like he doesn't know what to say, right? He's just kind of like, fucking Hitler is right in front of me. Oh my God, excuse my language. But this is super funny. He's got the book, the diary. So Hitler is looking at him and he goes, pen. And his little assistant gives him a pen and he autographs the Grail diary. I just thought that was so funny. It's so ironic, basically. It just cracks me up. All right. So anyways, they jump onto this Zeppelin of some kind. And he's talking to his dad about how to find the Fountain of Youth or how to find the land at the North Pole, the Holy Crater, the Holy Grail, etc. He says, "We will face 3 challenges. The first, the breath of God. Only the penitent man will pass. Second, the word of God. Only in the footsteps of God will he proceed. Third, the path of God." Now we're going to actually review these later on once they get to them. Only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth. All right, so that's a little preview of those trials to come. We're going to break down the trials once we get to those. Now, they jump into an airplane. There's this awesome airplane scene. His dad's in the back. He's like, shoot the bad guys, Dad, shoot the bad guys. And he has no idea how to shoot the gun, right? So he's just shoots it, and as he's chasing it, he blows apart his tail. Some of this has deep, wisdom and breadcrumbs of truth. Some of it is just super funny, and I just wanted to share some of the less important parts, I guess you could say, because it's great. I love it. It's a good story. He says, Dad, are we hit? Son, I'm sorry. They got us. So he totally blames it on the bad guys. I just thought that's funny. All right, anyways, Angel Love Bud. Hey, thank you. And Bub, welcome to my channel. Hey, Bub, good to see you. I feel like Wolverine saying that. All right, so anyways, Dr. Jones, Henry Jones, Indiana Jones, gets on the beach. He starts running on the beach, and they're trying to get away from this airplane fighter. And here it comes. Airplane's coming in, trying to destroy the Jones boys. And all of a sudden, his dad starts thinking, and it dawns on him. Takes out an umbrella, which, if you pay attention in the movies, there's a lot of awesome symbolism with the umbrella. I did a sweet movie, not a movie. Oh, Becca Davis. Thank you, Becca. Super appreciate you too. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. But anyways, I did a whole video called The Umbrella of the Occult. So if you're interested in umbrella symbolism, check out, go search for that one on my channel, Umbrella of the Occult. So he takes out the umbrella and he starts rushing at these birds, but he's making a chicken sound. He's clucking. He's going cluck, 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 like a chicken, right? And he's running after these birds. Remember how we talked about those people who are from the North Pole were considered chickens, which is, something that they sort of call them that. You see that in Back to the Future. You see that in Monty Python's Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I guess it's called now, after the Mandela effect messed it up. Anyways, so he's trying to scare all these birds, right? Making this chicken sound. All the birds fly up and totally sacrifice themselves to kill that guy, the airplane pilot. And he says, I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky. And he just walks away. I love it. So classic. Anyways, they show you the Republic of Haiti, which is where the bad guys are right now. Take a look at the architecture here, right? Take a look at this temple. Why was it built in this manner? Some people have speculated. I've heard people say that, these are supposed to emulate rockets, from ancient tech or antiquitech or whatever, that maybe these are rockets or spaceships of some kind. I disagree. I don't see a lot of evidence for that. What I believe that this architecture was designed depending upon the era that it was built in, that being one of an electrically induced atmosphere, the red sky, we'll call it, or one lacking energy that we live in now called the blue sky, right? So if it is an electrical sky or the red sky, which is sort of what they're showing you, it's sort of a reddish tint or an orangey kind of a tint there. These spikes act as lightning rods to keep the energy away. These domes act as attractors to draw the energy in. The dome is where you see that huge building. These little lightning rods are to make sure that when that energy comes in, it stays away from all those areas where the lightning rods are and it hits that dome, basically. So a lot of people are researching, these old architecture of domes and spires and Gothic looking stuff. And I believe that that's going to help you out on your path a lot. All right. So they're in front of these boulders and he's like, they got a tank. He finds that same dude who's trying to fight the bad guys now. And he's like, I'm a messenger from God for the unrighteous. For the unrighteous, the cup of life holds everlasting damnation. And then I'll get into more detail about that in a minute. So, okay, Indiana Jones's dad, Henry Jones Sr., goes down into the tank to try to rescue Marcus, which I guess nobody's really watching him. I don't know why Marcus didn't try to just leave the tank. He's not tied down. He's tied up, I think, but he's not tied down. Anyways, so he's like, Marcus! And these guys are buddies. They went to school together. So the first thing he does is he starts doing this little secret handshake deal, and he says, Genius of the Restoration. and then he starts clucking his arms like a chicken. Okay, so he points to the top of his head here with his thumb, and he says, "Genius of the restoration," clucks his arms together like the chicken type deal, right? Genius, by the way, means or implies spirit. Okay, or you could say by extension plasma, right? So plasma that restores or regenerates, that plasma of the world, the light of the world, is the genius of the restoration. He's clucking his arms, and then he touches his ears, and then Marcus does the exact same thing, but in reverse, and he finishes the quote, "Genius of the restoration, aid our own resuscitation," and he does it all backwards or whatever. So what you see here is that they were in a fraternity that's talking about the blue beam, the genius of the restoration, that aids in our resuscitation, that brings life back to the world, basically, right? This is this little secret thing that they know, that they're the ones in the know. They know about the fountain of youth. They're the ones who know. They're the ones that have the knowledge. So they have this little secret greeting that other people would be like, that just sounds like a bunch of kooky, weirdo nonsense. But to them, they love it. That's why they can do it so excitedly, because they know exactly what it means and what it represents. All right, so Indiana Jones, this is epic scene where he's just doing this total cowboy chasing a tank on a horse type scene, which I think is awesome. What is this? What did I even just do here? What is this? Hold on. Oh, that's right. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but I think this is an interesting side note. So Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was almost written as Indiana Jones and the Monkey King. And there is an entire backstory. There's a whole movie. Basically, the whole movie was kind of written out of Indiana Jones and the Monkey King. Very interesting stuff. Let me see if I could just glean through it real quick. I don't really want to read all of this because I'm taking a long time already. But in the Monkey King version, there was an orchard that grew fruit that granted eternal life. I believe they were peaches, just like we've talked about before. I don't know. I can't really. I highly recommend checking it out if you want to know like more. Right? This is going to give you a lot more. Indiana Jones and the Monkey King is almost what this movie was called. Jason M. Hey, what's up, Jason? Welcome to my channel. All right, cool. Then he says, the pen. And he's like, what? The pen is mightier than the sword. He makes a point to say that. Why is that important? Because the pen changes history. Okay, people write down things, people write books and stuff like that, and it survives the test of time. It outlives the things that are written, outlive the people that wrote those things, right? The pen and what is written, which is history, is way more powerful than going to war and getting in little fights and trying to take over stuff, right? All right, so then they come to the Canyon of the Crescent Moon, which we kind of referred to earlier, and they start walking through that. That's the trench, right? That is the gash. I can't remember all the different words for like trench and openings in the earth, gorges, right? But it is said that Mount Meru is not a solid one-piece volcano or plasma volcano, but that it actually split in half. This is very interesting because if the world does grow during these apocalyptic events, which could account for worldwide earthquakes, right? Then it would make sense that Mount Meru, which is right in the middle, it would have to grow out from the middle. Or it makes sense that it would grow out from the middle, right? It doesn't have to. But it makes sense to me that the place where it grows from would be the middle. It would grow from the middle and spread out. That means that Mount Meru would have to split, creating a huge canyon or a gorge in the middle. All right, so anyways, they're down into the bowels of the earth in a place called Petra. This is where I'm going to offer you a break, actually. Just a short one, not too long, just to grab some water or something, because we're about to take a huge, we're about to take a huge detour from the movie, and we're going to get into this. I'll tell you more about it here in just a minute. So a quick break, not too long, maybe 60 seconds or something. I'm going to grab some water myself, and we'll be right back. Around the world men's thoughts will fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye, and waters shall great wonders do. How strange, and yet it shall come true. Beneath the water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall even talk, and in the air men shall be seen in white and black and even green. For in those wondrous far-off days the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men in trousers wear, and to cut off their locks of hair. They'll ride astride with brazen brow as witches do. On broomsticks now there'll be a sign for all to see. Be sure that it will certain be. Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane and babes decrease, as wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. Pictures alive with movements free, boats like fishes beneath the sea, when men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world deep. All right, I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready for a detour. This is going to be very fun. We're going on another adventure in the middle of our adventure. So, when we last left off, we got to Petra, okay? Petra essentially kind of means rock. It also can mean father and some other words like that. But I want to show you a zoom in on this particular temple, this particular structure in Petra. As you can see, it's all made out of solid rock, or at least it seems to be, right? People wonder how this was made. And it blows my mind. The worldwide, God, there's so many videos, man. People are like, what technology did they use to like shape intricately these rocks into these specific this and that, right? Because what they're doing is they're not changing their environment to match what it used to be. They're asking these questions, but they're forcing the modern world upon these types of structures. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. That wasn't always solid rock. Like, there's no way that was always solid rock. That was something that was able to be easily shaped, which means it wasn't always solid, right? It was less dense. When the world depressurizes, everything becomes less dense. With more pressure is more density, right? Things become more solid, basically. Now, let's take a closer look at this building here. As you can see, we have the pillars, symbolism, the columns and stuff like that. This door is huge. It is for giants. Look how tiny these people are. I can't put my thing down there, but look how tiny the people are. Look how tiny the horses are. Look how tiny everything is in comparison to that, right? That just, sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. I'm not saying that this is right, but I'm saying it would be no leap of faith or anything to say that giants once existed, that there were giant beings that lived or used these types of places. That's why we had gigantic doorways, right? These days, we've all but forgotten about giants. Like it's a lie, essentially. If you talk about real giants living in the modern world, people will basically say that you're a liar. Like, you're crazy. You're delusional. You're out of your mind. There's no such thing as giants. Yes, there really was a such thing as giants. We were giants. We are shrinking. We are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as time goes on. And so are our lifespans. Now, check this out. I want to show you something here. Let's zoom in real quick. It's very difficult to see what's on the side of this structure, but there was once a statue here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in even more. Let's see how close we can get. All right, so you see this little statue type thing in between these pillars? I'm going to explain to you what this is. It's very important, okay? This right here, see these little bumps? Those are abs. Like, that's a 6-pack or something, or an 8-pack, I don't know. And this is a figure of a person standing in front of a horse. This is the butt and the hind legs of the horse. This is the head of the horse that goes off in that direction. And if we take a look, we can see, there it is right there, actually. So this is a way better version of it, okay? All right, so this dude was standing right in front of his horse. On the other side was another dude, a twin. Looks just like this one, standing in front of his horse. They were Castor and Pollux. Castor and Pollux. You might know them as, is it Gemini, I think? The constellation Gemini, right? The twins up there in the sky. Here's another example. So these two brothers, these two gods, are worshipped the world across. Sometimes they share the same names, Castor and Pollux. Sometimes they're different. The movie Face Off is ripe with Castor and Pollux symbolism, right? But this is them, and this is sort of the same exact version of the statue. You can see that they have the conical shaped hats on top of their heads as well, the pointy hats and stuff like that, right? So let's learn a little bit about these ancient gods named Castor and Pollux. Oftentimes, they were put on either side of the entrances of temples and stuff. They were also known as like horse deities, etc. Castor and Pollux, or Pollux is sometimes has a nickname Polydukes, which means much sweetness. And there's a very good reason for that. It's in reference to water, basically, sweet water or salt water, basically. All right, so Castor and Pollux, or Polydukes, are twin half-brothers in Greek and Roman mythology, known together as the Dioscuri. Dios, or Deus, or Zeus, is what that means. Scuri is children. So these are the children of Zeus. Zeus's two little twins that sit at his kneecaps or whatnot, that guard him on either side, basically. These are the anode and the cathode of the world, symbolically speaking. Their mother was Leda, but they had different fathers. Castor was the mortal son of Tyndareus, the king of Sparta, while Pollux was the divine son of Zeus, who took advantage of Leda in the guise of a swan. Now, I want to talk about that, okay? There is a story, there's many stories of the various gods and how they were very sexually promiscuous, and sometimes they just did whatever they wanted to with whoever they wanted to, be it male or female. And I feel like that's too bad that that's how it's been cartoonified in the modern age, because it pushes people away from studying it and researching what it really means. Was there actually a physical god that turned into a swan and had sexual relationships with a woman, enticing her, right? To just give it up or whatever for a swan? No, that's a cartoonification. Zeus turned into a swan because he had that really long neck or whatnot, and it craned off to the side because of the winds. Right? That's also where you get Kokopelli, and why Kokopelli is all bent way over on one side, and it's all symbolic imagery of the plasma, okay? So, no, this was not actually a swan that had sex with a human, okay? Now, though accounts of the birth of Castor and Pollux vary, they are sometimes said to have been born from an egg, along with their twin sisters, Helen of Troy, and some other chick I don't even know who she is. Sorry. Let me just try to say her name. I don't like it when other people do that. Clytemnestra. All right, Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra. So all you need to pull from that is that Castor and Troy are twins. They also had sisters, twin sisters, right? There's 4 of them. You know where we're going with this, right? They had twin sisters. They are the sons of Zeus that surround the central god of light or thunder or whatever you want to call it, right? And they were born out of eggs. I'm going to come back to that egg symbolism in just a minute. Now, let's take a closer look at what this says. This is from Pausanias in the description of Greece, an ancient historian. He says, a small island, no larger than a big rock, also called Pefnos, lies at the coast of Lake Daimon, or Lake Daemon, or Demon, you could say, the Demon Lake. The people of Ptolemy say that the Dioscuri, or the sons of Zeus, or Dioscuri, or Dioscoroi, were born here. So they were born on a small island no larger than a big rock. So a big rock jutting up out of the ocean is where these gods were born. Keep this in mind so we can figure out where it actually is. I know that Alcman, some guy named Alcman, also says that this, he says this in a song, but they do not say that they remained to be brought up in Pefnos, but that it was Hermes who took them to Pellana. That's funny. So let me rephrase all of that because it sounds weird when I'm reading it. Basically, the legends say that Castor and Pollux were born on an island jutting up out of the ocean that's basically a rock, right? Like a small island that's a rock that's jutting up out of the ocean. And although they were born there, they were taken by Hermes to another island called Pellana, which is really interesting. The root of Pellana is the same exact word as what we call pole or a column or a beam, right? And Hermes is that light. He's the thrice great. He is that central light that comes out of the middle of the world, basically. Or the three lights together, you could say. I'm totally not in the chat right now, so I'll have to check out your comments later because I have a lot of information to cover in this movie. All right, so let's check out this island that Castor and Pollux were taken to by Hermes. Pellene was situated 60 stadia from the sea upon a strongly fortified hill. The summit of that hill rose into an inaccessible peak, dividing the city into two parts. What it is describing to you is the mountain history has called Mount Meru, right? Many different names for the mountain. I just like calling it Mount Meru. All right. So Hermes took these other two, right? Joined them together, and they all three of them became one at this island called Pellene, if I'm saying that right. And the island of Pellene had a summit which rose into a peak that was so high it was inaccessible to humans. They could not go up that high. Pardon me. All right, let's move forward. Now, in regards to Castor and Pollux, they held spears upright beside them, on which they were leaning. One of them was leaning to his right. The other was leaning to his left. The reason that they have them holding spears, which are poles or columns or beams, and the reason that they're tilted inwards towards one another is because they represent the electrical arc that forms at the top of the world every other cycle. Now, Plutarch, in his book Life of Lysander, also says there were some who declared that the Dioscoroi appeared as twin stars on either side of Lysander's ship, that he was sailing out of the harbor against the enemy and shone out over the ruddy sweeps. Let me translate that into normal speak so you can understand it. What Plutarch is saying is that Castor on one side and Pollux on the other side, when you were on your boat in between the two and you had your oars off to the side of your boat, you could see them jutting up from the ground on either side of you. That's what Plutarch is saying about Castor and Pollux, the anode and cathode of the world, which is what I'm just going to call them. They were transformed into the constellation Gemini. The pair were regarded as the patrons of sailors, to whom they appeared as Saint Elmo's fire, which is plasma. Isn't that interesting? So the constellation Gemini is represented by Castor and Pollux, the anode and the cathode, the twins. Sometimes it's twin boys, sometimes it's twin girls, sometimes a boy and a girl, sometimes they're brother and sister, sometimes they're lovers, etc. The pair were regarded as patrons of sailors. Now check this out. Sailors would pray to Castor and Pollux, or to these two particular twin gods, for favorable winds in this particular region of the world. Why? Because that's where wind comes from. Not all wind, but the major winds, the jet streams and stuff like that, they come from the areas where the world is releasing pressure from the inside up here to our surface. And whenever pressure from the inside of the world is released to the outside, it creates pressure systems in our world. It creates wind, basically. Represented by St. Elmo's fire. It also says in the Odyssey, having honor equal to the gods, living on alternate days because of the intervention of Zeus. So this is really interesting. So one of them was seen as being immortal, and the other one was seen as being mortal. I know there's a lot of info going on, and it's quick to just, not process some of this, but this is crucial to what you're about to see in the movie, okay? Castor and Pollux. One of them was seen as being immortal, meaning always there, always present, always alive. The other one occasionally would die and go down into the earth and then come back and make an appearance. And he's resurrected. He came back and he's back again. And everybody's happy that he's back for some reason. Keep that in mind. Now, it goes on to talk about Zeus, who had been watching from Mount Olympus. He hurled a thunderbolt in order to save his son. Returning to the dying Castor, Pollux was given a choice by Zeus of spending all of his time on Mount Olympus or giving half of his immortality to his mortal brother, Castor. He opted for sharing his immortality with his brother, enabling the twins to alternate between Olympus, Mount Meru, and Hades, the underworld. We're talking, this is describing an electrical function, okay? Which to me, I'm going to say sounds like an alternating current. Okay, I'm not 100% sure on that right now, but it sounds, I'm kind of leaning towards an alternating current. But anyways, during this electrical arcing, you have one half of that arc is way more powerful than the other half, than the other side of it. So one of them almost arcs all the way by itself, right? And then this one is seen as being there sometimes, but sometimes the other one disappears and it actually goes down into the earth and it's not really needed in order to complete the electrical arc. I'm guessing on that. I'm still kind of studying that, but let's move forward. A uniquely Spartan aniconic representation of the Tyndaridae. Of the Tyndaridae. That's another name for Castor and Pollux, basically, was two upright posts joined by a crossbar. So the symbol for Castor and Pollux in the ancient world was two beams. This blows my mind. Two upright columns joined by a crossbar as the protectors of the Spartan army. The beam figure, they literally called this the beam figure, or the Dokana, was carried in front of the army on their campaigns because it represents where they were from, the Spartans, right? Here's an example of the Dokana. You can see they have the two beams, and on each beam is a serpent. On each beam is symbolic elements of plasma, right? And at the top, right in the middle, is a spider, grandmother spider, I would guess, right? This is very interesting too, because you have the two beams, but you also have this, looks like a ladder, a sideways ladder up there, right? Here's another image of the Dokana right there in the middle. You can see it there. Two beams, and then there's this connection between those two beams. That's called electrical arcing. They literally call this Jacob's ladder in those circles. Here they are again. Here's the brothers with their spears pointing inwards towards one another, etc. Sometimes they're shown as like holding on to each other or hugging each other because they're creating an electrical arc between the two of them. This is Gemini. As you can see, they're on top of the hill, on top of the mountain, etc. They're also associated with the moon because they're directly beneath the thing that makes the moon in the sky. Here's here's some pottery or a vase, or I don't know what that is. But here's the two brothers, and right in the middle is a giant column. A giant post, a giant pole. Here's a little toy action figure of the Dokana. I don't know, how did they even have this? This is interesting, but it's cool. I like it. Basically, it's seen as a gate. These are the two markers. That's what I'm trying to get at. Thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate it. The two markers that we were seeing in the movie that were split in half, and they had to find these two markers so that they could know where the Holy Grail was, is this. They're going to be one on one side, one on the other side. The two witnesses, the two angels, the never-ending story, right? I forgot what they were called, but those two sphinx things on either side. He has to go through the middle of them, right? That is what this is. That's what this represents. Look at this ancient coin that actually has this on it. Forget about this Caesar-looking dude, and let's check out the backside of this coin. Here is the ground. Right? On top of it is a volcano with the missing top. And flanked on either side is this anode and cathode with an electrical arc in between them. Interesting. Here's another one. Just in case you thought that was a fluke, this is all over the place in the ancient world. And this one, you can see there's 3 little electrical arcs that go across. The taller it is, the more little rungs in the ladder you're going to have. That shape, let's take a look at that shape right there in the middle, that little ladder shape, right? You have the 2 columns, the 2 pillars, and then you have the actual arcing itself, or that ladder shape, I would call it. That was a glyph. That was a letter in the ancient world. The Phoenicians called that the chet, or the het, or you could say chet if you would like to. It represents a boundary. It says here a tent wall, something that separates or divides, a fence, or a separation marker. Martin Moore, thank you. Thanks, man. So the het, the chet, the ket, this was a marker. It was a boundary. It indicated these were the pillars of Hercules. This was a place where it was a boundary. You are now leaving the modern world when you go between these 2 markers, okay? You're going into something different on the other side. This is the Jed, which is where we get Jedi from in Egyptian mythology and history. It's the same exact thing. You can see here, it's all electromagnetic phenomenon. And they knew about this stuff. And they would draw it and put it in their tombs. They would put it on the walls. This was all over the place. An electrical arc, an arc discharge, is an electrical breakdown of gas that produces a prolonged electrical discharge. Now check this out. Imagine this is Castor and Pollux. Okay? The current through a normally non-conductive medium such as air produces a plasma. The plasma may produce visible light. Here's an example. Here, you can see this is an actual example in real life of what it really looks like when you have the anode and the cathode and there's a charge running between them and the air ignites. The air becomes excited and it follows a path. You can see the electricity lighting up, right? Now check this out. The cathode fall and the anode fall, which is just like right where the actual plasma begins on either side, right? Right where the plasma begins on the anode mountain and the cathode mountain, okay? The Castor and the Pollux, the 2 witnesses, etc. The positive column this is going to explain to you why one of them is seen as being mortal and the other one is seen as being everlasting or divine or eternal, okay? Pay close attention. This could go over your head if you're not paying attention. The positive column has a lower voltage gradient and may be absent in very short arcs. A low frequency alternating current arc resembles a direct current arc on each cycle. The arc is initiated by breakdown and the electrodes interchange roles as anode or cathode when a current reverses. So they can become positive or negative whenever things reverse, when we go through a reversal or a reset, you could say also. This is some more petroglyphs that show the exact same thing, basically. And I've kind of already gone through this, so we'll skip that one. This is my own drawing. I like making my little Photoshop drawings of these things, right? You can put the middle one in there. Now check this out. This is also extremely interesting. What you are looking at is the temple remains of the temple of Castor and Pollux in Rome. Is it a coincidence that it just happened to only leave? I'm guessing that there was more than this before, and this is what's left. This is some of the only remaining pieces of the actual temple of Castor and Pollux. Now keep in mind where Indiana Jones is, where they're about to walk right between Castor and Pollux, right? That's not in Greece, but they are Greek gods. Isn't that something? More artists' renditions by myself using artificial intelligence. Greek mythology. We're going to get back to the movie in just a bit, but you need to know this in order to understand the rest of the symbolism in the movie. Castor, along with his twin brother Pollux, were worshipped as gods who helped shipwrecked sailors and who brought favorable winds to those who made sacrifices to them. Like we talked about, they're responsible for the winds. Now, we get back to the movie. The first trial. Now, Indiana Jones is hiding out off to the side, watching as the Nazis make somebody else go in, right? They're like, no, we saw the never-ending story. We know you laser eyes open and you get burned, so you go do it, right? So they have this random dude going in between these two lions, Castor and Pollux, respectively, okay? He goes in between these two lions, and he's walking up a staircase that is basically representative of an unfinished pyramid, right? Or a ziggurat. So this guy goes inside. There's cobwebs, spider webs, whatever they are, all over the place. And his head gets chopped off. Off with his head. He lost his head. He lost his senses. Hold on, I'm waiting for the video to catch up. Hopefully the streaming's good. So this guy loses his head, right? What does that mean when you lose your head? Not when you actually get your head cut off or something crazy like that, but when you lose your head, right? It means you lost your way, you lost your senses. You have not kept your sanity, basically. Now, Henry Jones Sr. gets shot, so Indiana Jones pretty much has to go get the Holy Grail to save his dad. All right, anyways, so he has to go up between the two lions. You've seen these two lions before when we broke down Back to the Future, right? That's the street that Marty lived on. In order to get to his house where Marty lived, he had to go between the two lions. It was literally Leon Estates, right? So Indiana Jones is going up, and the first test is the breath of God. The breath of God. The wind of God. The breath of God. The earth breathes. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it breathes, right? There's all these caves and stuff. Like wind comes up out of there. Breath of the earth comes up through these caves from way down below, from inside of the earth, and breathes onto us. Wind. Or changes the pressure and creates, weather and stuff like that. Only the penitent man will pass, though. Now, remember, he's on his way to Mount Meru. He's on his way to the Holy Grail. He's on his way to the Fountain of Youth. But only the penitent man will pass. The good guys, basically. There seems to be some sort of an energetic fence or barrier, right? Only those who have a particular vibration can pass through that barrier. Oh man, I hope the video is okay, because I'm getting like little warning signs saying the video might not be okay. But I'm going to push through. If there's any problems, just start yelling at me in the chat and let me know. I'll keep my eye on it. All right, so only the penitent man would pass. What does penitent mean? The root comes from the word pene, which means nearly, almost, or practically, which is of uncertain origin. However, I've done more research into it, and that word pene, if we take a closer look at it, it's P and then the A and the E together and then N. Pen. Means nice, decent, nice looking. Also, it means, nice, decent, nice looking, neat, sizable, tidy, decent, respectable. So penitent, a person who's penitent is a good guy. Basically, somebody that has good vibes, somebody that has a good frequency, somebody that has a positive frequency. Only the positive frequencies may pass through. Well, that makes sense to me, right? That makes sense. Like that sounds like a good kind of a barrier I would want around my house. I only want positive vibes coming through. I only want good people to enter into paradise, essentially. Only the penitent man will pass. Now, pene or pines also can mean punishment, pain, which is probably where the word pain comes from, effort, trouble, and sorrow. Only the man of sorrows or woman of sorrows may pass. Well, how is that the same as somebody who is good and has good vibes and stuff? Because those of us who have good vibes, those of us who are holding desperately onto things like kindness and peace and forgiveness and patience and love and happiness and stuff like that, right? We are my experience, my perspective, is that we're few and far between in this world, as the conditions are today. And because of that, we tend to be punished. Because of that, we tend to go through a lot of pain and effort, and we are broken. Only the penitent ones will pass. The meek will inherit the earth, as the Bible says. Also, the word pen, right, also can mean a quill or a pen, like something that you write with. The penitent man, the man with the pen, The man with the pain inside, right? Also, the pin is mightier than the sword. The pain that you feel inside is mightier than going out and physically trying to force people to do what you want them to do through violence. The pin is mightier than the sword. It also can mean the pin of a feather pin, or a quill. A long time ago, they had feathers and they would dip them into the ink, right? That's symbolic of the feather of Mahat in Egyptian mythology, right? Your soul, your vibration, your energy needs to match that of the feather of Mahat, which is Jacob's ladder. All right, hey, let me know. I hope that this is good for all of you. I hope that I'm doing this in a way that each little piece is well connected to the next so that I can build that bridge for you, right? Because it makes great sense to me. However, I'm very understandable that, like, to many people who have never heard this type of stuff before, I can't start with this. You know what I mean? I have to build a bridge and then another one and then another one so that you can make it all the way out to this island that I'm on. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense, basically. All right. Also, Pennsylvania. That's where the root of Pennsylvania comes from. It literally means the head. So the top. Somebody who makes it to the head of the island or the head of the earth. Also, Dimitri. Hey, thank you, Dimitri. I appreciate you. Pan. The penitent one. The pan. The pan can pass. The pan can come through. The pan can fly. The pan has a little plasma ball called Tinkerbell that follows him around, right? That's the whole Peter Pan stuff. I'll probably have to actually do a Truth in Movies on Peter Pan because that's a whole explanation. Pen or pan also means face. Pan also means face, or it can mean face. In Hebrew, it is panim, which is sort of like each side of the face. The face is sort of symmetrical, right? So it's one face and two faces. So the face in itself is sort of plural, because it has two sides to it. Panim or pane. And this is actually reminding me of the Hunger Games. Wasn't the land called Panem or something like that? Anyways, panim, which is a plural form of pan, the penitent one, the pain-filled one, etc., is one of the most prolific words in the Hebrew Bible. It shows up over 2,100 times, and it is translated as face. But it also means presence, the surface, the front, before, and the countenance, or the glow, right? Pan in Spanish, if you've ever worked at a restaurant, you've probably heard mas pan, right? A time or two when you need some more bread. It's Spanish for bread, the bread of life. Pan, Peter Pan, the pain inside of you, the broken ones, right? Trust me, the reward is on the way. I know times suck right now, but keep hope alive. The penitent man is humble before God and kneels before God, down on the knees. Also, that's symbolic because I feel like when the apocalypse happens, everybody's going to fall down. Like either whether it be earthquakes or the atmosphere being sucked up into the sky and it's difficult to breathe or whatever. A lot of people are the presence of God will be known, we'll say, and people will fall to their knees, essentially. Oh yeah, I see. Hey, I'm glad you guys are putting little words and stuff and adding to the presentation in the chat. That's awesome. All right, so anyways, he goes through, there's all these razor blades and stuff. I don't have much for that right now. Only in the footsteps of God will he proceed. So now we come to the next path. So in order to get to Mount Meru, you have to proceed in the footsteps of God. It says proceed in the footsteps of the Word. Now I'm going to ask you to suspend your judgment and put aside, if you're a religious person, just put aside your religion for just a moment to think outside of the box and consider something, right? It doesn't mean you have to believe in it, but just consider it for a moment. Proceed in the footsteps of the Word. And then he says, the name of God. Well, let me tell you something. The word name means a descriptor. That's what it is. Whatever you were named should be a description. Typically, babies, were not named before they came out of the womb. We do that opposite now. People are naming babies that haven't even been born yet. They're like, oh, I know a cool name for my baby. That's not how that's supposed to work. Like, you're naming something before you even know what it is. You know what I mean? You need to know what it is, what it does, what it smells like or looks like. You need to interact with it and have some sort of a relationship with it before you can put a descriptor on it. right? That's how names work. So the name of God is going to be a descriptor. Now, check this out. There's a lot of bickering in religious communities between various religious, offshoots and stuff about what God's name is. So let's talk about it. His dad's dying, and he says, but in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah begins with an I. Or however he does it, right? Jehovah begins with an I. Interesting. So he's saying Jehovah is the name of God, and it begins with an I. So Indiana Jones is about to step on the J because he's going to spell Jehovah. Now, personally, I would have tested that out and maybe just like put a tippy toe on there, hit it. I don't know. It's definitely right in front of him, He doesn't. He just full on walks onto the J and falls right through it. So he's like, oh, snap. Luckily, he was able to hold on. I don't know how he did that, but this is also really interesting. Look at this underworld that they have with these pillars shooting up. That's pretty interesting. So he falls down. Now I want to show you the name Jehovah. Let's talk about Jehovah and the name of God, or the name of what people refer to as God, or the local God, okay? I'm not talking about the creator of everything everywhere. I believe that there are different forms of what people call God, okay? And it depends on their experiences and their upbringing and stuff like that. So let's get back to the teaching, okay? Jehovah. This is one example of how they spell that. I-E-Hova. I-E-Hova. Okay, interesting. You also have the plasma volcano symbolism, and Jehovah comes up out of that. So whoever Jehovah is the plasma volcano God. Okay, with the mist that comes around, the fire at the top of the mountain, etc., and so on and so forth, right? Let's take a look at the 10 Commandments, because the 10 Commandments is where they typically get the name of God. It is known in Judaism as being a commandment. When he says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, etc., and so on and so forth. Well, this right here is the 10 Commandments, not the original ones or anything like that. This is a cartoonification, okay? However, the reality is the glyphs are correct, okay? Or semi-correct, I should say. I have done a whole video about this. It's called, I forgot what it was called. It was about Enki, but I'm going to give you the short version. Welcome to my channel. I didn't see who that was, but welcome. All right, check this out. I'm going to show you the name of God in the Bible, in the 10 Commandments, in the original Paleo-Hebrew, or you could say Phoenician, okay? Now, this is the first tablet on the left here. I'm going to read it to you, okay? My Phoenician's a little rusty, so bear with me. But this right here is basically A. This is an N. This is a K, and this is an I, okay? Or this could also be an E, okay? This vowel right here is called Aleph. And it's translated and it has transcended the language barrier into various vowels, okay? So this can be an A, and if you turn that sideways, you can see how it's an A, right? It's also an ox head, etc. But I don't want to get too lengthy into this. So this is a vowel of some sort, followed by N-K-I. And what that says, in modern Hebrew, they pronounce it Anoki. But it can also be pronounced Enki. Okay? Now, let's look at the next thing. So, Anoki in modern Hebrew means I am, essentially. And that's weird because that's not even how you say I am in modern Hebrew. It's Ani, like Anakin Skywalker, right? Ani means I am. That doesn't say Ani. That says Anki. That doesn't say I am. That says Enki. I'm going somewhere with this, right? It says, it's translated, I am the Lord your God. That's not an accurate translation according to my studies, okay? This says Enki. Enki, and then it says right here, it looks like, this is like a Y, the H, the W or the U, and the H. So this is the Tetragrammaton right there. Those next four glyphs, okay? YHWH, or however you want to say it, right? This is the Tetragrammaton. This is what they say is the name of God. Or this would be a J, an H, a V, an H, okay? It's written in different languages, or in different ways, right? So Enki, I am, and then this next word, it's weird, they don't really have separators, but this is Al Yika, Allahika, or Elohika, which means your God. Enki, I am your God. That's literally what it says here as I'm translating the Ten Commandments, okay? And I highly suggest if you don't, I don't want you to really take my word on it. If you're a studier, do your own little study on this alone and it will blow your mind, okay? And then translate the rest of these commandments and stuff and it will also blow your mind. Now, I want to tell you something about how the ancient gods used to write when they would command the people. They would start, if they issued any edicts or decrees or rules or laws, they would put their name first to let you know where those laws are coming from. Okay? Enki, I am. This says, I am Enki, your God. Here's what you are to do, basically, is how I'm translating that. All right, anyways, then there's all this other ones. I don't really want to take the time to translate the rest of them right now, although it's a super fun study. Oh, okay. So here's some examples. I guess I gave you some visuals. Enki, Anki, etc. There is the Tetragrammaton right there. This glyph is the Yud or the Yod. It could be the J, it could be the I, it could be a Y, etc. This one right here is where we get our letter E. It looks just like a backwards E. It's also an H, etc. This is the Vav, right there in the middle, the V, or that Roman numeral 5 that we were talking about earlier, which is also in modern languages and alphabets represented by the double U, the double V, the V, the U, the U, etc., and so on and so forth, right? All right, cool. I hope that made some sense and helped some people out. And like I said, just, take what resonates. If that doesn't resonate with you, then totally fine. Just remember the rest of the stuff we've talked about. All right, cool. Now check this out. Let's look at the Grail Diary because now he's in front of a cliff. He's in front of the exact gorge or trench that he's looking at in the Grail Diary, right? So this guy now represents Indiana Jones. What does it say here? Hold on, I'm just going to check this out with this all. I know everyone wants to know what it says. The path of the something is inextricably bound up with sacrifice. Something like the path of the righteous man is going to include some kind of sacrifice or something like that. And then he's got the Grail here, but wait a minute, what is underneath all this, right? Hold on, look at this next to the Grail. Look at Henry Jones Sr.'s notes. I'm glad you guys are all hanging out with me. I know some people are like, I gotta watch this in like 5 different days. It's taking forever. If it is, I'm super sorry, but I'm having a good time, so I'm just gonna go with it. It says here, Dr. Jones writes, each of its 8 cups contained one of the elements of the divine draft or wind. We already talked about the wind, Castor and Pollux, right? And how they supplied winds, etc. And it says here, each of the 8 cups, it's got a picture of one cup, the Holy Grail, only just one of them, right? It didn't say Joseph of Arimathea had 8 cups, etc. But this is referring to 8 cups. Like the Holy Grail is made out of various grails or cups. 8 cups. This is super interesting because it reminded me of the tarot card. The 8 of Cups. Let's take a look at this 8 of Cups and see if we can find any connection to the movie that we're watching. Well, we have an explorer. We have a traveler, somebody that has a walking stick. They are walking in the direction of this split mountain, and their back is to us, which means they have turned their backs on the rest of the world to take this journey to this split mountain, which is directly underneath this part moon, part sun type deal. Lots of symbolic imagery there. Now, if you look up the meaning of the 8 of Cups in tarot cards, which is interesting too, because the root of tarot is tar. And we already talked about tar, which is deru, which means tree, right? So tarot or terot is just a plural form of tree. It means trees, basically. All right, so the upright tarot meanings, abandonment. So when you're handed this card and you're doing the tarot cards, right? If it's right side up, it means the regular. If it's upside down, it means the reverse. That's symbolic of many things, but one of those is the reversal energetically that our world goes through, right? How things become backwards. This is why many of you feel like the world is reverse and upside down of what it should be, right? The upright tarot meanings for this card are abandonment, walking away, letting go, travel, escapism, reaching the limit, introspection, withdrawal, disappointment, seeking the truth, I think that's supposed to say, loneliness, weary, and emotional strength and courage. Okay? This represents those who are on the path to walking away from the rest of the world, turning their backs on the mainstream. Just like Indiana Jones or young Indiana Jones did at the beginning, he turned his back, he walked his own way, he went away from that line of lemmings that was his Boy Scout troops or whatever, right? When you turn it upside down, it represents the opposite. It means you give up. It means you just want to be plugged back into the matrix, essentially, right? But this card right here, the Eight of Cups, represents the spiritual journey. Reversed, it means a fear of abandonment, right? A fear of commitment, a fear of moving on. It implies being stagnant, staying where you are, monotony, accepting your lot in life, circle after circle after circle. A lack of self-awareness, emotional maturity, faking happiness, low self-esteem, and clinginess. I'm going to let that one be. Some people I feel like needed to hear that. So Indiana Jones saw his thing, Eight of Cups. Man, this is his moment. This is his moment of choice. Am I going to leave the known world behind and venture into the unknown? It requires faith. It requires a penitent man. It requires walking the path of God. Only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth. Now, we show you this picture, same exact thing. That's Indiana Jones, as we've talked about before. As you can see, though, there is no lion's head in this painting. Nowhere. There's no lion's head anywhere. But they put the lion's head in the movie because it's not really a lion's head you're jumping off of. It's symbolic, right? Hey, Nature Journeys. Good to see you. Welcome. All right, so what does lion mean? Let's check out the word so we can figure out what the lion's head is and all this lion symbolism. The root in Polish is lew, L-E-W. Now, leon is one of the lew. It's hard to explain because you have to understand how words work and stuff, but on in lion means one of. It's a suffix from the ancient world. It means one of. So a lion is one of the li or liu, or in Czech, lev, right? Very much like the word love, and appropriately so. In Old Irish, it was leon. In Welsh, it's you or liw, I guess that might be pronounced. Levu, etc. So that's the root. Is this L-E-U or L-E-V? Let's check it out because there's another similar word in our modern language. Lava, lava, leva, etc. Molten rock issuing from a volcano. Okay. But then it says lava means a torrent or a stream, not necessarily molten rock. We apply that, and now we have that connection. But originally, lava was not just molten rock. It meant a stream. It was a word that meant a stream, a torrent, something that is flowing. It's also in Latin where we get the word lavare, which means to wash yourself clean in that stream that is moving constantly. It's not stagnant. It's the opposite of stagnant, right? It's also lavese, I think, right? In maybe Spanish and stuff. The loo, if you have to go to the loo, you're going to the current to wash off, right? The Proto-Indo-European root word is L-E-U-E, which means to wash. Liue, or live, or louis, or Louis, King Louis, etc. There's lots of connections to this particular word, but it means to wash, okay? So lion means of the current, electrical current. Also, the physical byproduct is a physical current of water. All right, just wanted to point that out, the electrical current, all right? The lions represent electrical current. Whew, I'm sorry, that's like a real long roundabout way of explaining that. All right, leu. It's also where we get leu. Now check this out. In Romania, the unit of money is called the leu. It says here, monetary unit of Romania, introduced in 1867, literally means lion. Leu means lion. Monetary names, the word for lion came to be a word for money in some languages. Another word for money is current or currency. See where we're going with that? All right, cool. Now, I'm going to read you a Bible verse real quick. Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat, let me shrink it down. Him who sat on the throne, which is Mount Meru, with a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. These are the 7 mountains, etc., which are sealed up because those volcanoes form plugs or whatever sometimes. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" But no one in heaven or on earth or under earth could open the scroll or even look inside of it. I cried and I cried because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or to look inside of it. Then one of the elders said to me, "Don't cry. Look, the lion," the current, the electrical current, right? "The lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David or Dawid, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." So then I saw a lamb. We looked up the word lamb when we did the Lord of the Rings. And basically the root of lamb is similar to lamp or light. Then I saw a lamb looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne, the middle of Mount Meru, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. So imagine this, that there are these 7 spirits or 7 electrical currents that are sent out into all of the earth. Do you think maybe 7 source energies that strong might have some sort of influence over our society? Possibly. What is this? I don't even know. Let me look at this up. A monolith known as Lion's Head was once an active volcano. Oh, that's right. So now I'm making the connection with the lions and the electrical current to the gateway for the lions, or the lion's gate. The gate where the current can flow out of, which is oftentimes a volcano, basically. A monolith known as Lion's Head was once an active volcano. So this right here is called Lion's Head. The reason it was named that is because it was once an active volcano where the currency came out of, right? The plasma volcanoes that I talk about. This one right here is actually called Lion's Head. And it says, here's a secret about Lion's Head. This is in Cape Town. This is in Cape Town in Africa, South Africa. This blows my mind. Check this out. It says Lion's Head secret. There are a number of hidden caves on Lion's Head, which have spectacular views of Table Mountain, right? And this is in Cape Town. Now, I asked Google, basically, Lion's Head, is Lion's Head volcanic? Because I wanted to see if there was a connection. Lion's Head is not a dormant volcano. Apparently, this is a popular question that people ask that Google needs to answer it, right? It's not a dormant volcano. There is not volcanic activity of any kind in Cape Town because it is not located near the edge of any tectonic plates. So, Lion's Head was formed by differential erosion. Basically, they're just going to say wind and rain over millions of years, okay? They said there's no volcanic activity in Cape Town. Can I just show you what Cape Town looks like? Check this out. This is Cape Town. No volcanic activity in Cape Town, which looks like a giant volcano. Okay, I don't know, maybe not, I don't know. I'm just saying it totally looks like a huge volcano, okay? But whatever. Also, there's the Lions Club. The Lions Club, like a fraternity, basically. Same type of Freemasonic type of a deal. Here's a pin from the Lions Club. It says Illuminati Community. Lions, right there. The all-seeing eye, the plasma volcano symbolism, etc. Interesting stuff. And then he says, impossible. Nobody can jump this, right? This is the leap of faith. Indiana Jones doesn't have the right heart condition at first. He's like, this is impossible. Just because you don't know how it can be done does not mean it is impossible. For him right now, it is simply impassable because of his self. Like, he's keeping himself from passing by, so it is impassable to him. And it's because of him that it is impassable. He says, impossible. Nobody can jump this. Morpheus says, free your mind, Indiana Jones. Free your mind and jump to the other side. Also, there's a good call out to this is the leap of faith that's seen in many, many movies, okay? It's the jump program, it's a leap of faith, etc. And quite often, it is between two, like a gorge. It's over a cliff. A bottomless pit, a cliff that seems to just go on forever and ever and ever. And you have to take this leap of faith that if you jump into this cliff, that you're not going to just die, because that's what people think, right? If I jump off this huge thing, I'm just going to die or whatever. But as it may turn out, there's different physics involved. And the legends say there's a way to survive, basically. It's a leap of faith. Mount Meru, the leap of faith. So, puts his hand over his heart, and he walks, takes a step straight forward. And as you can see, it's a little bridge right there. I want to point this out. He needs to walk in the path of God. Had he gone and off to the side, he would be dead. He has to follow the straight and narrow. Okay? It's representative of the arrow of light, the blue beam itself, is straight, okay? It's seen as the arrow that hits the target up in the sky, right? To walk a straight path and relax. All right, so he walks the straight path. He ends up symbolically inside of Mount Meru, where there's this old knight-looking dude who's guarding the various cups or grails that are in there, because there's false ones. There's false grails. Remember, grail means crater. There's false craters, false holy grail sites everywhere in the world. Ones that are not the true grail, right? People have left that area and they've taken their stories and their names and their descriptions and they've applied them to new places, false places that are not that. They're the origins, right? So this knight's sitting there chilling. He knows every sound in this place. And he's like, oh, snap, somebody's right next to me. And they show you the room that he's in. Now, I'm going to show you the room that he's in too, and I hope I was able to get all of this, but I want you to take a special look at this carving that's in front of him, okay? Take a look at this carving. I zoomed in on it just a bit here. I'm going to zoom in a bit more. In the middle, you have the Jesus figure, the Savior, the King, etc., and he's sitting inside of an egg. You see that? He's in an egg, and he is flanked by some sort of a cosmic bird and some sort of a cosmic angelic being. On the sides, we see that there are these columns. Interesting. And there is a little guy inside of the column with a little arch that's connecting the two pillars. This is insane. Here's another one. These are the eggs. Remember how they said Castor and Pollux were born out of eggs? Okay. So they have their own little magnetic islands. They have their own little electromagnetic shielding outside of them. And this would be like Mount Meru or the central island here in the middle. And this is the one hand up, one hand down. He's wearing the crown, etc. I highlighted it so you could see it better. See? So this is before, this is after. You can see that there are the electrical arches, right? It's electricity. It's electromagnetic. And he's sitting inside of this central egg. And he's got one hand up and one hand down. Kind of like that symbol I was talking about earlier at the book burnings or whatnot, right? And he's squatting. He's the squatter man, if you can see that. Now, why does he have one hand down and one hand up? And on either side is Castor and Pollux, right? The anode and the cathode. Remember how we said that sometimes it can be, especially with an alternating current, I believe if I read that correctly, okay, I could be wrong, but sometimes one of those goes down into the inner recesses of the earth while the other one is still prevalent. So for example, if you have this beam shooting up from this side and it's pulled towards that central column, it ends up on this side over here, while this one is non-existent. That one is down in Hades, basically. This is reciprocated all over the place in many types of what people commonly, most people would probably say it's pagan or it's satanic, and mostly I feel like it's, they just don't know. They're ignorant of the original meaning behind these things. So it's kind of scary. So they just call it satanic or something that's from the enemy or, confusing or something like that. But this is where this comes from. This is also why the Illuminati or the Freemasons, etc., and all those various fraternities use this exact same type of symbolism. It is the Castor and Pollux symbolism. See that? Columns, the pillars, right? This is also where you get the origin of the caduceus and the rod of Asclepius, right? One of them is whenever there are both anode and cathode present, and they make the double snake all the way up the central pole. The other one is whenever one of those has gone down into the inner recesses of the underworld, and it is missing for a time, and it is seen as having died, or on vacation or something, right? Madonna doesn't rep good? I don't know what that means. Don't get my attention right now. Sorry. It's too much weird stuff happening lately. Anyways, all right, so we got the snake. And the snake has the two beams. This is your dollar sign, right? There's a difference between, this is how much value is attributed to something. It's more valuable, more potent, more powerful when you have both beams, right? But when one of those beams fizzes out and recedes back into the world, you just have the one, and it's less valuable, which is why our money only has that one beam in it now. All right, so we've got those. Also, this reminded me of the egg in the middle that represents Mount Meru in Under the Dome, Stephen King's mini-series, right? You've got the egg here, which represents Mount Meru. You've got the circular land around it. And then in the show, they have like this pile of leaves all the way around that egg, which is the mountains that creates the mountains of that map that I've showed you many times, right? These would be the four witnesses or the four living creatures, etc., that surround each side of Mount Meru. And they are said to be located at the four corners of the earth on those four lands, or possibly in that crystal clear lake of the four lands. I'm not exactly sure where the location of the living creatures are right now, but I'm working on it. Also, the exact same imagery of Columbia, or the woman goddess that represents the column of Ya, the column of Enki, the column, etc. And that's why she only has one sash that is going up one way, wrapping around her and coming back up in the form of her arm, which finishes up in the light, right? All right. Then he brought me, this is from the Bible, Ezekiel chapter 8, it says, "Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord. And I saw women sitting there. They were weeping for Tammuz." Now, this is very interesting because Tammuz, I feel like, directly ties into, Tammuz is an ancient god, okay? Some people feel like he's a wannabe version of Jesus and stuff like that. He is definitely fits the savior type character over time. Many people, many different saviors and gods and stuff like that. Tammuz is one of those. Tammuz died, basically, and people wept. When they saw that Tammuz was missing, women would weep. Look where they are. He brought me to the entrance of the north gate to the house of the Lord, the temple of God, the throne of God. And I saw women sitting there weeping for Tammuz, who is one of those pillars, right? So this would be during this time, not the caduceus time, but the rod of Asclepius time, if that makes sense. One of those beams from the anode and cathode are missing. One of them has retracted, possibly due to an alternating current, is my guess, going back into the inner recesses of the world. Now let's learn a bit more about Tammuz real quick. The best known myth of Tammuz describes his death at the hands of his lover, a punishment earned for his failure to mourn adequately when she became lost in the underworld. So check this out. You have Tammuz on one side, his lover on the other side. His lover died, went down into the inner recesses of the earth, and Tammuz took the throne. And when she came back, because she was resurrected, as they always are, she saw him on the throne, and she's like, "That's messed up. You're not even sad. Right? I just died and came back and you're just chilling, ruling the world." So she banished him to the underworld and they sort of switched sides, right? Interesting. So Tammuz would be born again. Tammuz would come back. And when he was gone, it had an impact on the physical world that we live in. We saw that that other light was missing, and we knew that that was going to bring about bad times or hard times or troublesome times in comparison to when all those beams are present working together. All right, so check out this poem that Tammuz's lover, she's like, oh man, they get pretty descriptive in the ancient world, I'll tell you that. But listen to this. Dumuzi, which is another name for Tammuz, Dumuzi. Dumuzi, has a dream. All of these rushes, which are like reeds or beams, are growing around him, and reeds tremble for him. He is lost in a grove of tall trees. As the shepherd god, Dumuzi is in charge of the sheepfold, but in his dream, water is poured over my holy hearth. The bottom of my churn drops away. Now he's got a churn, like a butter churn, which is really interesting because we talked about the churning of the ocean and how the ocean turns white, basically, because of all the bubbles and stuff. And all the debris and stuff like that. My drinking cup falls from its peg. What is he talking about? Well, the peg is the vav, the beam. The cup that's being supported by that peg is the dome, the electromagnetic dome that is created. Then the beam goes away, and he says, my drinking cup falls from its peg. There's no electrical charge any longer, so there is no corresponding magnetic field. My shepherd's crook, or the vav of the world, the light of the world, has disappeared. An eagle seizes a lamb from the sheepfold. Eventually, the churn lies silent. No milk is poured. The cup lies shattered, and Tammuz is no more. The sheepfold is given to the winds. That means all those people that worshipped him, wherever they happened to live, were scattered across the face of the land. His churn lies silent and no milk is poured. So that churning of the ocean in Hindu and Vedic cosmology or history or mythology, whatever you want to call it, the ocean doesn't turn milky white anymore because there is not that electrolysis that's happening in order to create the chemicals and the gases and stuff that aerate the water itself and turn it white. The churning of the milk of ocean. Here's another example. Let's zoom in on this. So right here you have Mount Meru. Right there is Vishnu, I believe. Right? He's got 2 arms up, 2 arms down. That's the blue beam. So that's Mount Meru right there. On one side, you have all the good guys. On the other side, you have all the bad guys. This is positive and this is negative. This is the anode and the cathode. And when they are working together and they're all standing in the water, okay, there's an electrical charge that runs into the ocean water itself. And all kinds of interesting things start to happen because that electrical charge can change the water, okay? It can break it down into its actual elemental forms. Here's another picture of symbolically the anode and the cathode working together on either side of Mount Meru and the ocean water turning white. It's called the churning of the ocean. Let's read the legend. The legend says that Indra, or sometimes Indara, also akin to like Thor, you know what I mean? God of lightning and stuff like that. Indra, the king of Svarga, was riding on his divine elephant when he came across the sage Durvasa, who offered him a special garland given to him by an apsara. Okay, so let me break it down real quick. Indra, this god in Hinduism, was on his elephant, and some other god gave him a special garland. Now, a garland is like what you hang on a Christmas tree. It's kind of snake-like in nature, so it represents plasma, etc., right? Indra takes the garland and places it on the trunk, or sometimes the head of the elephant, on his mount as a testament to his humility. The flowers had a strong scent that attracted some bees. Annoyed by the bees, the elephant threw the garland to the ground, and this enraged Indra. It says the sage. This enraged the sage, as the garland was a dwelling of fortune. I'm gonna say this in my own words in just a minute. And was to be treated with a prasada, or a religious offering. Durvasa cursed Indra and all of the devas to be bereft of all strength and all energy and fortune. Okay, so let me tell you what's going on here, basically. All right, so this is the blue beam got sucked back into the world and everyone lost their power because we live in a weak world. Okay, there's not a lot of energetic function in this world. It's all being sapped. It's all going down into the earth to recharge. So that's why you're tired. That's why you sleep. That's why you eat. That's why you do all these weird things to get energy. Okay. So going back to the story, reaching their destination, the great serpent coiled itself around Mandara, which is like Mount Meru, and Vishnu counseled the devas, which is like the positive side, to tug from the head of the serpent, which is symbolically the electrical arc. Okay? So this mountain over here is holding on to this serpent, this electrical conduit. Okay? The Asuras, observing this, refused to hold on to the tail of the serpent, perceiving it as inauspicious. So the bad guys are like, no, we don't want to touch it. We don't want to mess with that snake, right? So the positive is doing its job, which represents the divine brother, the twin divine brother who is there. The devas are like, no, we don't want to do it. So they were not present. But the moment that the devas joined them, they created this electrical arc. And look what happens. The devas relented and held the tail of the serpent, and the churning commenced. That means that the ocean started to turn white and bubble and boil, as they say. When venomous fumes were emitted by Vasuki, which is that serpent, the Asuras were affected due to their decision to hold its head. So the Asuras, which are like the bad guys, I believe. This is like the Azir, I think. All right, so hold on. Let me read this and then I'm going to explain it in my own words because we're getting super deep right now and I don't want to lose track myself. When the venomous fumes were emitted by Vasuki during this churning of the ocean, the Asuras were affected because of their decision to hold on to its head. The Samudra Mantana bequeathed a panoply of substances from the ocean of milk. One of them was the lethal poison known as halahala. In some variations of the story, the poison escaped from the mouth of Vasuki as the demons and gods churned the ocean. This terrified the gods and the demons because the poison was so powerful that it could destroy all of creation. Check this out. So we're talking about an electrolysis system, right? An electrical system, right? Where you have a mountain that acts as an anode and a mountain that acts as a cathode. And there's an electrical arc created between them. You have the good and the bad, the positive and the negative. They're holding on to this electrical snake in the sky, right? And when they do that, the ocean starts to churn. It starts to bubble. Why? Because there is a strong electrical current that is running through those waters at the top of the world, okay? And it separates the water into its elemental pieces. So water is H2O, right? So it separates it, hydrogen and oxygen. However, there's salt water up there, right? Which means there's sodium, right? And it's actually sodium chloride. So this electrical charge is able to separate the sodium chloride as well, giving rise, literally, figuratively, everything actually, to chlorine gas, poisonous gas, okay, that comes up out of the ocean. Very poisonous, very toxic. You don't want to sip on chlorine gas or whatever, right? But it separates it. This electrical charge separates those gases that are, or those elements that are creating what we call salt water or whatever, right? And new gases are formed, and they can merge with other things and create new things as well. Now, if you look up why does water turn white, it says when running water strikes with obstacles, it breaks and creates bubbles. Bubbles reflect the light back and it appears white. Some of you may have seen this. Here it shows you different glasses, right? You see the glasses, and sometimes you might have this kind of water out of your tap, right? Sometimes it's cloudy. I mean, if you're in California, I know you've seen this, especially Southern California. But anyways, so it's all cloudy, and you have to like let it dissipate because all those bubbles need to go up to the top and pop so that it can be clear once more, right? It's aerated, basically. Once in a while, you get a glass of water and it looks cloudy. Maybe milky is a better term, right? After a few seconds, it miraculously clears up. The cloudiness might be caused by the water in the pipes being under a bit more pressure than the water in the glass, but it's more likely due to tiny air bubbles that are in the water. Now, if you put a battery into water, specifically this 9-volt as an example, right? It creates an electrical arc or current between the two, right? And this is what it looks like. If you could do this at home to see how the churning of the ocean works. This would be the Azuras, this would be the Devas, etc., or I don't know which one's which right now, but it creates bubbles in the water. Interesting things start to happen. This one will start developing like a buildup, right? There's an interesting transfer happening here, but you have to study electrolysis and stuff like that. I'm just giving you the very short form of it, okay? Basically, Castor and Pollux, okay? The arc in the low-pressure sodium lamp extinguishes each half cycle as the lamp current reverses direction. This occurs at a speed imperceptible to the human eye. Time out. The reason I'm talking about the low-pressure sodium vapor lamp, right? I've shown that many different times because that is a type of what happens up at the North Pole. That is the new light source, and that's one of the reasons why the sky turns red and stuff like that, and orange and yellow. Because we will live in a low pressure, the world will be depressurized, we will live in a low pressure sodium vapor world, essentially. Right? So let's take a look at the small scale, which is the low pressure sodium vapor lamp that we've made after that. And it says that the current reverses direction, but it happens so fast that we can't see it. That's because we have microscopic examples. If you take one and blow it up to the size of a country, you might be able to see it taking turns and the god appearing and then disappearing, the other one taking its place, etc., right? You might be able to see that. The reignition of the arc, the electrical arc, requires an adequate available sustaining voltage from the ballast. We read on. Talking about chlorine gas. The product formed at the anode is ideally oxygen because that is harmless to the environment. However, during saltwater electrolysis, toxic chlorine gas can also form at the anode, right? Remember that story of the churning of the ocean? And they got together, the positive and the negative. All of a sudden, all the bubbles in the ocean started turning white, and there was this toxic gas or fumes that were emitted on one side. Are you seeing the connection? Man, I really need to condense these videos and cut out all of the in-between talk, but I don't have time. But this is like one of the really important parts of the video. Sipping on straight chlorine. That's what that whole song's about, basically. Here's another example of it. We're gonna skip forward a bit. All right, so Indiana Jones. Oh, that's right. We're watching a movie, right? All right, so Indiana Jones is in front of the knight. The knight says, "You are strangely dressed for a knight," right? He doesn't feel like he should be dressed like that. Why? Because they're inside of an electrical mountain. Okay, and the knight is properly outfitted to handle the current. The knight is wearing chainmail, which acts as a Faraday cage to protect him from shocks from the holy bees that float about in Mount Meru, basically. Everybody still hear me? Everybody see everything's working okay? I just want to just check real quick. Wow, 426 people watching. Well, welcome everybody. It's an honor to have you. All right, so anyways, let's go back to the movie. I just want to make sure everything's good in the chat, and we're good. Oh, thank you, Donnie Danko. Appreciate it. All right, cool. So back to the movie. Hopefully everything's good. I'm going to move on. So he says, which one is it? The bad guy comes in, he has no idea which grail it is. He hasn't studied, he hasn't researched. You know what I mean? He just heard rumors and speculation and stuff. He thinks it's an actual physical cup or whatever. Which one is it? There's a lot of imposters out there. Which one is it, right? Which Mount Meru is it? You know how many Mount Merus there are in the world? There's a bunch. But there's one original Mount Meru. There's one original Holy Grail. There are many craters in this earth, but there is one that is the cradle of civilization, or the crater of civilization. You must choose, but choose wisely. For the true Grail will bring you life. The false Grail will take it from you. Interesting. So if we have an anode and a cathode on one side or the other, one is giving energy, the other is taking it. Right? You need to know where you're going. And in order to know where you're going, you need to be perceptive in those things that are happening around you. For example, if you're out and about walking and all of a sudden birds drop dead out of the sky, that's a sign and an omen, right? Not a good one. Anyways, so we're talking about the grails, the true one, the false one. This guy picks up a big shiny one that he thinks Jesus would have drank out of. He says, this certainly is the cup of the King of Kings. Okay, pal. Well, you're wrong on all fronts because there was no physical cup. Definitely nobody held out a cup to catch Jesus's blood. That's just weird. I don't know why anybody would even do that. It doesn't make any kind of sense. You know what I mean? I don't even know if that would be permitted. Like, I'm sure there would be Roman guards, like, guarding these people and stuff. I don't know. Anyways, so this certainly is the cup of the King of Kings, all decked out in gold, etc. Eternal life. So, drinks it down, has some of his holy water. However, holy water has an ill effect on evil people. So he's processing. He's waiting. Then he's like, oh, snap. Oh my, something's not right. This guy starts super aging, right? He gets old real quick. Starts turning into this mummified version of himself. Let me back it off a bit. Okay, I'm back it off. I know it's creepy. Let me talk to you about something. The way that he is aging. Okay, I know this is creepy. Look at him, right? This is us. Sad to say. This is you. Right now. All of you. This is me. This is all of us. At this moment in time right now. Without the grail, without the life, without the fountain of youth, this is what's happening to you as we speak. You are rapidly aging. It's just that you've been brought up and grown up in a world that's so used to rapid aging, you know, faster and faster and faster, that it's the frog in the pot syndrome. You're just grown accustomed to it. I'm here to remind you, this is not the natural way of things, right? Some of us, we don't hearken to this age. Some of us, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel normal. We can feel ourselves. We can feel our skin changing and dying and entropy kicking in and watching our hairs turn white. And that's not the way it always has been. This is the world you live in. Super fast. People grow, they get old, they die fast. They're babies that age fast, basically. But in the world to come, not so much. He chose poorly. I love that part because he obviously did not like the dude. So he's trying real hard to like be cool, but he's like, nah. Anyways, the Nazi chick says, it would not be made out of gold. Right, so it would not be made out of gold. We're talking about these different mountains. Remember, one was represented by copper. The other one was some other kind of silvery metal, right? I can't remember what it was. So anyways, Indiana Jones grabs this older looking cup, the cup of a carpenter, chugs it, just totally is like, I'm committed. Let's do it. I know it's the right one. Chugs it down and he says, you have chosen wisely. Now, do you notice this knight, how they put him in this sort of pale blue light? Purposefully, right? You can see the electrical arc behind him. You have chosen wisely, but the Grail cannot pass beyond the Great Seal. That is the boundary and the price of immortality. So, if you would like immortality, keep in mind the Grail, that we call the Grail, cannot pass beyond the Great Seal. It's stuck in one spot in this world, which is exactly where she's stepping on right now. That's the symbol for it, right? That Grail, that beam, it's not going anywhere. It might move from side to side, you know, like those inflatable flailing arm thingies or whatever. Okay, like Cocapelli, you know what I mean? Leaning over from time to time, moving about, one hand up, one hand down, both hands up. It might dance in the plaza, but it's not going to leave the plaza because it's stuck between the seal, which is the anode, and the cathode, which is what creates it, basically. All right, so the earthquake happens, the world opens up, sucks the grail, the cup, down into the earth, symbolically pulling the blue beam, retracting it back down into the earth. Also, this is Mount Meru splitting. Okay, the legends say that Mount Meru splits. It's a split mountain. All right, so all the people are freaking out. They don't know what's happening. Indiana Jones falls down into the crevice. His dad grabs him, and the grail is right there. And his dad says, "Let it go. Let it go." What does that mean? What is that symbolic of, right? Let it go. Sometimes you got to just let things go, right? His dad is more concerned. Now, I mean, his dad is probably going to live forever because he did pour the water into his body. So I don't know how that works, but it's probably easy for his dad to say that because he already had the grail. Oh, wait, so did Indiana Jones. He had to drink out of it too. Jesus, they're both going to live forever. How is Indiana Jones so old in the next one? He drank out of the grail. That shouldn't be happening. Anyways, I'm just off on a tangent. All right, so he says, let it go, right? You got to let things go. I had something for that, but it slipped my mind. I'm sorry. All right, so then we see the knight. He's also doing the one hand up, one hand down thing, right? He represents the blue beam itself, etc. And the missing portion, Tammuz being dead, the anode or the cathode. I have to figure out which one it was. I think it was the anode. All right, so they narrowly escape as this column breaks and falls. Exactly how we talked about. One of those columns has to break. If we're talking about an electrical system that is similar to possibly an alternating current off of a much greater, grander, low-pressure sodium vapor lamp type of plasmic arch, right? One of those columns, Castor and Pollux, right? I forgot which is which right now, but one of them has to die. It has to go into the underworld, and then they switch places. And it happens on a small scale so fast that you can't really see it. But if you make that the size of a country, you will see it, right? One of those columns breaks. One of those pillars of the world breaks. It dies. It goes down into the inner recesses of the earth. And we have evidence of this in the symbolic imagery of the Freemasons, right? We have what is called the Virgin and Father Time or something like that. I forgot what this is actually called, but there's this Virgin right underneath the constellation Virgo there, actually. And you can see she's worshiping at this broken altar, which represents Tammuz, which represents one of the anode or cathode being retracted into the earth itself. And then you have this dude, this angel, right behind her, who's actually in other images, he's holding her hair, almost like she doesn't know he's there, right? It's like he's invisible. So it's like it's not some weird creepy old man standing behind this virgin chick with angel wings or whatever. He's holding onto her hair, almost like he's controlling her or manipulating her as she stands at the foot of the broken column. Right? That symbolizes one of those lights disappearing because it's possibly an alternating current. So he's holding onto her hair almost like he's controlling her, right? Let's take a look at another picture. Here it is again. Same old angel guy holding the hair of this young virgin who is at the broken altar. Once again, Father Time. Here's another one. This is from an actual building where they have the broken column, the virgin, and Father Time, or the angel that she doesn't even know is there behind her. Raccacoonie is what that reminded me of. Actually, see how he's like holding onto her hair, right? And he's kind of controlling her. That totally reminded me. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this is from Everything Everywhere All at Once. I did break that movie down. It's exactly like the raccoon holding on to the dude's hair, or Ratatouille. Same thing, right? Controlling him from, out of other people's line of sight or whatever. Here it is on top of some random building that I found on the internet. On the top there, you can see him, Father Time, right behind her, and the broken column, the broken pillar. Indiana Jones escapes with his life and he asks his dad, "What did you find, Dad?" Well, what were they looking for? Me? Illumination. His dad found illumination. And I hope you did too during this presentation. And then they reveal that Indiana Jones's name is not Indiana. It's actually Henry, named after his dad. He says, "We named the dog Indiana." So let's learn something right before we leave here. If we look up Indy, as in Indiana, right? The root Indy. Boom. It's related to the word end, like the end of the movie, right? The end, the conclusion, the boundary, the district, etc. Indiana is a boundary of Anna. What does Anna mean? Let's look it up. Anna, or Anna, is a word-forming element denoting a collection of sayings, gossip, etc., connected with a person or a place. So gossip about a place, because that's what Indy is referring to, the place of the boundaries. Indiana literally means legends of the Garden of Eden, legends of paradise. Interesting, right? That's his name, Henry Jones Jr. What does Henry mean? We haven't looked that one up. Henry, from the French Henry, blah, 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 Henricus, and you'll see this all over the place. Henry was the main name for the kid in Once Upon a Time. That's just the first one that came to my mind. Literally means the ruler of the house, from Heim, which means home, and Richi, which means ruler. Ruler of the house. It comes from reg, which means to move in a straight line. Imagine that. Or to rule with a straight rod. To rule righteously, right? To move in a straight line, just like he walked earlier, walking the line, right? To move in a straight line, to do well. And they ride off into the sunset, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and the sky turns red. Did you guys have a good time? I know it was long. It's probably longer than the movie, but I had fun. And I hope you did too. Thanks for watching and hanging out with me tonight. Let's roll the credits. Until next time, I'm Jay Dreamer saying good vibes. And goodbye.
So hard to fade away. I try so hard to fade away, but something's forcing me to stay. It'd be
Who are you in this vast multiverse?